to Cinema Boulevard. I'm Daniel McGregor Hoyer.
I'm Matthew Huh.
And how are you doing today?
It's very warm today. We hit almost high 80s, so we're officially in summer weather, at least for now. But yeah, I'm just trying to survive. Hopefully I don't melt away while we record.
Yeah, same. I know we talked about it earlier, but the AC went out. But luckily, maintenance guy came in clutch and fixed it right before we started recording.
Excellent.
So
he knew.
Yeah, he knew. I mean, because when it gets hot down here, it gets like humid, like, because, sometimes like Texas, like it depends, like you're either going to get the dry heat, whenever you hit the drought season, or you're going to get humid heat and where you're just going to be sweating like crazy. So it's always an adventure with the heat down here, especially with, summer coming around the corner. So I'm not sure how it is in the northern hemisphere for you, but
the northern hemisphere.
Yeah, I mean, I know I was in Minnesota, but I'm not sure about that. It's been a bit.
It fluctuates. I know in the summer it could be as humid as the Amazon rainforest. So yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, it's awesome. But yeah, I have you. I know. We wish we were in Cannes, France, for the Cannes Film Festival. I mean, hopefully we could get down over there down the road. But I don't know. Just like some of the reactions I've been sort of seeing, it's like it's been a lot of division, oddly enough, and it's like some films that have either done very well or have been like, or just have been pretty, like some said like really bad. I'm trying to remember the films off the top of my head that were in competition. But
wasn't like Oscar Farhadi's newest film like booed? Or
yeah,
did I just make that up?
I believe so. Like, and I like see the 1-star reviews from Letterboxd, like, and David Ehrlich of IndieWire, like, has been seeming pretty like lukewarm, but Oscar Farhadi's like Farewell Tales, like, I guess really polarized some people.
As of when we're recording this, I believe Nicholas Winding Refn's new film, Her Private Hell, just finished its premiere, and I don't think any like aggregate scores have come out, but I saw the Letterboxd curve, and oh boy, it's low. So
Jeez.
I'm scared now because I was looking forward to that film.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I know Pablo Kowski's Fatherland, like, has been seeming pretty lukewarm. I mean, I liked Cold War a lot in Valsida. Those are great films. But it's kind of insane that there's been sort of like lukewarm responses, and then something like Parallel Tales where really threw off the audience. But I'm hearing great things about Fjord, though. About Fjord.
Yeah, Fjord did well. I think Ryusuke Hamaguchi's new film did pretty good too, but it's a bit of a harder sell because it's like 3.5 hours or something. So there's that, and then Hope, which was done by Na Hong Jin, Korean action film, that got very divisive reviews. I know David Ehrlich, he kind of tore into it, but I've heard some other conflicting reports. Some are saying maybe it could win. I don't know. I don't know if people are just saying that just because Park Chan-wook is the jury president and they're just trying to be like, oh, he'll give it to a Korean director. But I don't know. It seems like there's not really a front runner for the Palme d'Or at this rate. But I guess, do you think a Neon film is going to take it again? 7th year in a row?
Probably. I mean, Neon's been like, darlings at con. It's crazy just the amount of times they've won in recent years, and I mean ever since it was ever since Parasite, right?
Yeah, since
Yeah,
Parasite, they have not lost a Palme d'Or.
yeah, like because of course you have Honora, which was a few years ago, and you also had like I don't know why I'm forgetting the names. Titan. Yeah, Titan. Yeah, really great. There's been a lot of good picks there. So yeah, they'll probably take it again. I mean, I think Fjord's like probably the. Oh no, that's not by Neon. Is Hope was the
Is
one
it?
by Neon, right?
I thought Fjord was by Neon.
I don't know. I'm just looking at the Wikipedia. I don't see a sliver of Neon, but I mean, maybe because it hasn't
Oh yeah,
gotten distribution.
they did. They purchased the
Um,
distribution rights for the U.S., UK, Canada, and Australia.
oh, okay. So
So
Wikipedia is just behind then.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, so they're just behind. My China scene doesn't surprise me. Renata Reinsva and Sebastian Stan are in it. I mean, Sebastian Stan, like, dude's been really proving his chops
Well,
recently.
good director too, Christian Mungju. I,
Manju.
I have no idea how to pronounce his last name. I'm sorry, but he did 4 months, 3 weeks, in 2 days, which is a really good film. I think he won the Palme. Yeah, he won the Palme d'Or for that. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
not saying he can't win
film.
again. That's happened before. So
Yeah, really, and also like best director for Graduation back in 2016. But I don't know. I mean, not a filmmaker I'm too familiar with, obviously, outside of 4 months, 3 weeks, and 2 days. Which I think is great, but I definitely like it's like when I went on a whole Team Trier binge for a while. I mean, after watching Worst Person in the World and Sentimental Value, it's like a small body of work, but that's a really seems like a really good body of work.
yeah,
So,
I should get more into his films. I liked 4 months, 3 weeks, 2 days quite a bit. So
yeah, I think it's like the universal favorite. So,
yeah,
it could be Fjord now, but we don't know that
yeah.
yet.
Well,
Because
we'll
it's
know
hard to
by next
predict with him.
episode. So
Oh yeah,
yeah,
we'll know. I mean, it's hard to predict with audiences at con because there's so many films that gotten booed. I know we talked about it when Cat Trow was on did episode about Wild at Heart, but that got booed. But now people see it as a classic. Pulp Fiction, good example, like that got booed. But now people see it as a classic. So you never know with that audience.
Well, that it doesn't even have to be if the film got booed or not, but it's more it could be a bit lukewarm, or at the time it wasn't seen as a good Palme d'Or winner. I think for Tree of Life, when that won, like whenever that movie came out, some people it got mixed reviews out of Cannes, but then over time people were saying, "Oh, it's one of the best films of the 21st century. It's a masterpiece." So it depends. Like more often than not, the Palme d'Ors do have a longevity and a life of their own. So we'll definitely see which one, at least from the 2020s, is going to be like, oh, the defining Cannes film of this decade. I mean, I don't want to lump Parasite into that because that was technically the 2010s, but that really kickstarted more spotlight, even, especially in the digital age too. So I don't know if you follow the Cannes like Instagram or social media, but they're definitely trying to appeal more towards a younger, not like kids, but more like the Gen Z film demographic as well. Yeah. They do a lot of like live streams and like a lot of red carpet photos.
Yeah, and of course they like try to get like younger critics in there as well, like Karsten Runquist, who's been, I think he like said he went to Cannes and back in film school, but like they're now he's not just getting invited to those things. So
yeah, they have a lot of good programs for like university students and young adults. Like they have I think it's the 3 days in Cannes program still, which I think is for young adults. where
Hmm.
you have to like apply and do all that. They won't just like blindly accept anyone. You have to like submit something, I think. But there is an opportunity to go, but you just got to fund it yourself, and it's expensive.
Yeah, for sure. And I know there's like sirens behind you, so I'm just gonna keep talking until those go away. But but yeah, it's very interesting because like Cannes is very much an invitation only like film festival, which is very different from like the rest of the film festivals we see. Like you could go to TIFF, like, and you just by buying tickets, it's just like you have to. It's like a wait list in terms of what films you want to go see because those tickets like go fast. I know New York Film Festival is like pretty accessible, right? So
Yeah, it's pretty. I've heard TIFF getting nightmares for that, or getting tickets for that is a nightmare. New York Film Festival is it's not as bad as TIFF from what I understand, but just because it's in the busiest city in America, yeah, some tickets go by very fast. I remember lining up to get tickets in person because the website would always just crash due to all the traffic, especially if you don't have one of the festival packages. But yeah, I mean, 9 times out of 10, if a film premieres at Cannes, it goes to TIFF and then to New York. So
yeah,
yeah.
for sure, goes all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's it's fun nature about film festivals. I do want to go to like one of those one day. I think it would be very awesome.
Yeah,
Probably
New
busy.
York is definitely New York is definitely a good one to go to because it. I've noticed they tend to have the highlights of a lot of other festivals. Like I know some people say about TIFF is that it's impossible to see everything because there's just so many films. Whereas with New York, it's a bit smaller and they seem to not weed out, but there's a lot more. Doesn't seem like there's a lot of like filler in the lineup. It just seems like, oh yeah, these are just what we deem to be the quote highest quality, essentially, because it's not a
Mhm.
competition based festival either. So
Yeah, for sure. Just show the film, mystery film in there too. I know you're probably kicking yourself about Marty Supreme.
yeah, the one time I was out of town and it was during that, so that was a bummer. But oh well.
Yeah. It's insane. But speaking of, I know we mentioned it earlier, but like long journeys, we got a long journey ahead in this
Yeah.
episode. We're going to be making a trip down to my film recommendation all the way in Middle Earth, and that is the Lord of the Rings franchise. To me, like probably what I consider to be probably one of the best film trilogies ever made. Period. Like I don't think there's. I know there's probably a lot of people like, what, you don't like Star Wars? I like Star Wars. I love it. But Lord of the Rings, like that is just another level of just filmmaking for me. But before we get into that, I mean, what has your experience been with this franchise?
It's actually somewhat recent, considering that Lord of the Rings is one of the film franchises. It's one where if you consider yourself a fan of film in any way, you need to watch these movies. But I didn't watch them until the first week of the pandemic because I was just waiting for the right time to watch them. These were films that I remember a lot of my friends in school they really liked, and my dad also enjoyed them quite a bit. He went out and got the extended edition DVDs. I think for me to watch just at some point, and I was just waiting for the right time because even then I knew the reputation. That was like it's very dense, they're very long, they're very expansive. So when the first week of COVID hit and we were all locked up inside, I figured this is literally the perfect time. I have nothing else to do. I'm just going to spend an entire weekend watching the extended cuts. So the first time I watched them was the extended cuts, and I really, really liked them. And don't have as much of a personal, like long history with these films. So I was approaching it from a more adult point of view. And I really, really admire just the craft, the ambition, and just how these films really do feel like a journey. And there's so much to talk about in terms of like the production too. But the fact that Peter Jackson, he filmed all these back to back really goes to show that these are not just disconnected stories. This is one expansive narrative that takes place over the course of 9 hours, or in the case of the extended cuts, is it something like 15 hours? I think it's
which like that takes you a whole week.
Pretty much, yeah. So for this podcast, this is my second time watching them, and I guess to put it out there, we watched the theatrical cuts for the sake of time, I think. But I really, really love these movies. I think as a trilogy, it's one of the best film trilogies of all time. And I find that interesting too, because I don't know about you, but for me personally, fantasy genre is not a personal favorite of mine. Like, I don't dislike it, but I just find it a bit harder to get into. But this is one of the exceptions where it's so well done that nothing else could top it in my mind. Like, these are the fantasy films.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, my introduction came probably like late 2000s, early 2010s. And fun fact, I went backwards a little bit. I actually started with Return of the King before I watched Fellowship and Two Towers. Because my mom randomly had a DVD of Return of the King laying around. And it's like, all right, let's just watch this. And it's insane, like, how easy it was to sort of like grip on to the story and the characters, because it's like one giant continuous journey, and ever since that moment, it's like I was hooked on Lord of the Rings. I did read the book. Like, that thing is a brick. You could probably like drop it in the ocean and it'll be a big splash. Like, it's a very dense book. And Peter Jackson, like, it's a huge, huge maximalist, to the extent it's pretty interesting, like, watching him jump from films like Heavenly Creatures and Brain Dead from the 90s all the way into something like Lord of the Rings, where you could just see the money on the screen and just like how everything's just made. And it's like something that left a huge impact on me, especially as like, as a wannabe filmmaker. And it's just insane, just the scale of these films and just how they manage to just sort of build on top of one another, and just knowing that journey is going to keep continuing with even more challenges along the way. And it's really impressive. And the fact that this is like, the first fantasy film to win not film, but one of the films, Return of the King, was like the first film to win Best Picture at the Oscars in the fantasy genre. Like, it's insane, just the level of like audiences and critics just sort of uniting and like loving these films and just the impact they've made. So it's wild. It's wild. Like, you never see. I think we've gotten close in the modern age, but it's hard to imagine like anybody like trying to replicate this.
Yeah, it definitely had its influence, but at the same time, it's such an ambitious project that the fact that it even came together as successfully as it did is something that I don't think any other trilogy or film franchise will ever top, because as I mentioned, they filmed it back to back. And so if for whatever reason the first film didn't do well, then there's like, oh shoot, well, we got to release the other two. We made them already, unless they were going to write them off for tax reasons. But when you film it all at once, like, you're committing to that. You have to be confident that A, you know what you're doing, and B, that people will like them, essentially. And Peter Jackson definitely does that. I've never read the books, but even when watching the film, you can tell he has an admiration for Tolkien's work, and adapting that into the film, it feels very methodical and well thought out. Like, every detail, nothing felt like an oversight, basically. This is one of those films where you can sense that everybody on the production understood the assignment and believed in it too, and that helped fuel not only just the execution of the story, but also what grew audiences towards it, because it's focused on the characters, this journey, bringing all these people together, basically to put aside their differences to destroy this one ring. And it's when you summarize it like that, it sounds simple, but obviously this film is anything but, or these films are anything but simple. They go into a lot of the mythology of Middle Earth, the different, I guess, groups of people, the other kingdoms, and just everything about it. It's just so expansive and just beautifully done.
Yeah, it's awesome. And obviously we got more of the gawk about with it. But, like any great film trilogy, I mean, unless you're 12-year-old me, we got to go ahead and start from the beginning. And this is like sort of before, Jackson came up with the idea, but initially the only iterations of Lord of the Rings we had at the time, at least in film form, were the Ralph Bakshi versions and the Rankin Bass version, which, those are, the Bakshi versions is probably like the closest they had at the time. The Rankin Bass one was very hit or miss, to say the least, but then again, that's just Rankin Bass for you. But yeah, for a time, it's like, outside of like that, and of course, like one of the most popular Led Zeppelin songs off of Led Zeppelin 3, I believe. Like nobody really knew much about Lord of the Rings outside of what they read in the books. And so this was already going to be a lofty step to take for Peter Jackson, because he initially, development started 1995. He tried to convince, of course, disgraced film producer Harvey Weinstein about it. And, Weinstein was on board. He did executive produce the films, along with his brother Bob Weinstein. And initially it was supposed to be for Miramax, but it eventually led to them going to New Line Cinema, where they ended up actually showing an iteration to New Line, and then that's where the production officially got greenlit. And, the CEO was a big fan of the concept, and, a few years later, we got the Fellowship of the Ring back in the good old year of it, like what, 2000, 2001, I believe, 2001.
2001. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is just coming off the cusp of the 2000s. And keep in mind, fantasy films at the time were considered to be like box office poison. Because, because I guess like you said, sometimes it's a genre that is somewhat hard to latch onto, just because there's people that can be confused by a lot of things. There's so much lore that could be given to a certain world. Like there's like reasons why like a lot of like the fantasy films of the 80s and the 90s didn't do too hot, maybe outside of something like Princess Bride. But there's just a lot of failures that, kind of, deterred studios from ever going into a route like Lord of the Rings. But when Fellowship came out, like people loved it. I think it was what people wanted out of it. And it's kind of amazing to me that, at least to myself personally, that this film, like the theatrical version, holds up really, really well. And it just gets better. But yeah, like, what are your impressions on Fellowship?
Yeah, this one actually was better rewatching it than I remember, because I recall the first time I saw the extended cut. Like I like Fellowship, and to preface, I like all of these movies. They're all fantastic, but Fellowship was the one where I remember thinking, oh, this is definitely slower paced. It's a lot of exposition, but I think rewatching it, knowing with that context in mind, it's so quaint, and I love how this film takes its time with the atmosphere, because this is not just the beginning of one film, it's setting up the entire trilogy. So it's got a lot of ground to cover to make not only introduce all the characters, but introduce the settings, the stakes, the consequences. It has to do all that in this one movie. And I just really, really love how we see all these characters thrust into this situation. And then from there, it has probably some of the most effective emotional beats. Like when you contrast the introduction of the film with Frodo in the Shire, when we're introduced to Gandalf and Bilbo, and just how his life is so just kind of chill and simple. But then he carries this new responsibility of, oh, he's going to be the one to destroy the ring. And this little hobbit who has not seen basically anything outside of his own little neighborhood, basically going on this grand adventure, it's really, really striking. And just seeing the weight of responsibility that he has to carry, but also just the dangers that peer around every turn. It's a really gripping film. And I think narratively, this one might actually be the most singular. Like, I would argue that the other two films, you can't watch them independently, whereas this one, you can watch it on its own, and for whatever reason, if you decide not to watch the other two, there is a full story, I would argue here, even though it does, I wouldn't say it leaves off on a cliffhanger, but it's just setting up the adventure. Where it ends up is sort of, I describe it as almost a hopeful tragedy, where I don't know, do we want to say spoilers? Because these movies have been around for a while.
Yeah, I would just say, like, they've been out for a while, but spoilers would be a good idea. So just basically spoilers from here on out for the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yeah, so like at the end, the Fellowship, which consists of Bilbo, Sam, Merry Pippin, Gandalf, Legolas, Aragorn, Gimli, Boromir. Am I forgetting anyone else? But
Merry
whole
Pippin.
Fellowship.
Yeah.
Merry Pippin.
Oh, Gandalf. But did you mention him?
I did mention Gandalf.
Oh, you did?
How could I forget Gandalf?
It's the greatest boy band in history, guys.
Pretty much, yeah. But yeah, when they establish the Fellowship and they start going on the adventure, but then when the Fellowship falls apart and they all splinter off into their own little, not side quests, but their own adventures, it's kind of sad where it's like, oh, you don't know what the fate of the rest of them is going to be like. There's a lot of like, ooh, what's going to happen in the next one? But it also ties back into essentially a story about loyalty and friendship. We see that a lot with Frodo and Sam. And overall, I found myself I was really emotionally attached to this one and I was surprised to feel that, because I don't recall feeling that to as much of an extent as I did when I first saw it. So this was actually a really nice surprise watching this. And I think it's hard to say which cut was better, but I think based on my overall emotional experience, I think I prefer the theatrical cut compared to the extended cut for Fellowship of the Ring. There are some key differences, particularly one criticism I know that a lot of people say with the theatrical cut is that Boromir's development is significantly slashed, because they don't really touch on the stuff with his father and stuff, but it almost adds a certain level of ambiguity to his character that I think is fairly interesting, whereas in the extended cut, they sort of make his motivations more clear, and then it leaves out some of that interpretation. So it's a bit of a give and a take, but overall, I think this one is stronger as in the theatrical version.
No, it's been a while since I watched like the extended versions, and because I always like gravitated toward the theatrical versions, and oddly enough, like despite the fact that the like theatrical versions are like an hour and a half shorter, like the thing is all these films are like over 3 hours long. I think Two Towers is like the shortest, but just hitting 3 hours. It's very interesting to me where like this film like probably has the most perfect setup for a story. I mean, when it starts, you get like this narration from Cate Blanchett, who I don't think was really a household name yet in the acting sphere. Like, of course she had the Elizabeth films as well. But so she was established, but not like the big star that we sort of see in the 2010s now. But her like narration is just so ominous, and just how they sort of detail the lore of this world and how everything is just sort of set into motion, explain the background of the ring, the background of Sauron. And it's just like perfect in how it just sets everything up. Like, and so it's like what you want out of this type of story. Like, it just does such a good job really setting everything up. And then we get to the Shire, and it's like it's just such a pleasant place, and the atmosphere is just incredible. Um, just in this one location, like the thing that these films do such a good job with is just feeling tonally perfect. Like it has the levity there with, some bits of humor is like sprinkled throughout, but it also still has the dark sides of this world and these characters. It like this is such good tonal balance. Like it's not afraid to go super far with like all the dark stuff in this story, and yeah, they definitely had to take some parts out of the book just because like it's very, the book is a freaking Bible, like probably even bigger than the Bible. But it is crazy in how they managed to like keep this tonally consistent with like the rest of the film, because like it doesn't feel as if like you're getting such tonal whiplash going from one scene to the next. It all feels fluid, and it's it's even like better once you sort of get to the acting, because I think casting front to back is just perfect. Like
Yep.
it's like you. I mean, I think we all know these roles from these actors like Ian McKellen, Elijah Wood, Viggo Mortensen, Sean Astin, Orlando Bloom, John Rhys Davies. Like, it's just such a great cast. And everybody just completely envelops these roles so well, and these characters are so easy to latch on to. Because because in terms like they're not the most like overly dynamic characters. They do change as the journey goes along, but they have such identifiable traits and ways they say things that it's so easy just to sort of get roped up in these personalities. Like, I know like some people get annoyed with like Merry and Pippin, but yeah, those two are hilarious. Like
Yeah.
they just is so much humor built in, and when the story does need to go dark, like these actors do know how to handle the material very well, because this like is probably some of the toughest material you're ever going to deal with. And it's incredible that they managed to like pull this off, just from a dialogue standpoint, because some of this dialogue is very, you know, archaic and very old fashioned in some cases. Like, you're sort of reading out of something from like medieval times or whatever. But they do such a good job in terms of just interpreting that dialogue, interpreting those words, and it doesn't feel like that they're reading off of a note card. It actually feels like they're actually know these words and that's coming out of their mouths. It's like amazing on how this cast just works, and the story is so good, and just the way it's all set up, and it's like it just sends you, once you're out of the Shire, it just sends you on this like grand journey, and you sort of feel like how everything you think it's going to go right, it just goes wrong instantly, and you're just sort of there with the characters as you try to see how they are able to get out of these precarious circumstances. It's very gripping. Like, that's like the one thing I was surprised about on rewatch, because for a film that's just about setup and exposition, like you would think it would take so much time to do it, but in all honesty, like it does a really good job of making you latch on to these characters that easily, and make you feel like that you're literally just going through like the toughest part of the journey, and we haven't even gotten started yet. It's crazy.
Yeah, it also does an incredible job communicating the scale of Middle Earth, and so much of the film is dedicated to the practical effects, the use of force perspective, especially with the hobbits and and the other characters. That sense of depth is really, really good. The makeup is especially impressive, like with the orcs. Like I've forgotten just how good the orcs look, and I think some of the effects in the whole in the trilogy overhaul, like it was groundbreaking for its use of CGI. Obviously, it wasn't the first one to do it, but when it comes to having these large scale battles, there was no other way to do it besides with the digital technology they had at the time. And there's some in every one of the films. There's a few shots and a few effects that haven't aged the best, if I'll be honest, but it still doesn't change the fact that it's still very impressive for what they were able to do at the time, because we were still, what was this, 2000? They were working on this probably at the earliest, the late 90s. So into the early 2000s, we had like what The Mummy Returns was probably around this time. So like it could have been so much worse. Like that's one thing I think about when watching this trilogy is when you compare it to other films of the time, there are so many ways where any of these films could have gone horribly wrong and it would have just been an absolute disaster, but everyone cared. And I love seeing that in these films in particular, is that you sense, they grew to really care and appreciate like what they were doing and to make it as good as possible. How should we structure a conversation like this? Because with the Lord of the Rings, there's so many like details and characters and storylines. So
yeah, for sure. I guess it would be very good to sort of just like we could just probably talk about just the overall craftsmanship that we sort of see, like the production design, for example. I think that's like the thing that Peter Jackson really emphasized a lot, is because, of course you got the first perspective shots in there, and but the more I watch him, the more you can easily tell that it's first perspective, but it still doesn't make it any less impressive. It's very awesome, like, in how they managed to pull out the size of these characters, because like Elijah Wood's like confident, I think like 5'10", 6 foot almost. And then Ian McKellen's like 6'4". So these guys are like probably like 5 or 6 feet in terms, 5 or 6 feet apart in terms of their height. But it's impressive that they managed to like make them look this way. Like it's so, like it's incredible. Like just how they managed just to sort of find some way around. Like there are points where like you could tell from behind, when you're like walking behind Frodo, that it's certainly a little kid in a costume. But it doesn't take away the believability of it all. It really does an impressive job with how like these practical effects just work. And the fact that the production design just really does such also is great as well, just like being sure that everything is out of like a certain size, because a lot of it you could say it's like just the visual effects, but it's the camera work, it's the production design, it's the acting. Like they all play a part in being sure that these characters are actually this big and this small compared to one another. So it's really impressive on how they just do that. It's really awesome. But I guess like it would be good to sort of like jump into sort of how you sort of see like this sort of hopeful tragedy, because that is something I never like thought of when like watching this, where it's like because it does feel like you're being put in more precarious stances, but the more I kind of thought about it, it's like, yeah, it sort of does fit into the element of like a hopeless tragedy or hopeful tragedy, not a hopeless tragedy, like for a better word. But yeah, like I guess kind of go into that a little more.
Yeah, you really see that more, especially towards the last third, and I would say probably the smoking gun, let's just say, is Gandalf's sacrifice, and what a great emotional moment, especially when Gandalf is such a great character. He's like, when he's introduced, he's so warm and comforting almost, but then when he needs to be serious and needs to take charge as this leader, like, yeah, you really believe like, he's a very powerful wizard that has a lot of carries a lot of like weight and gravitas, and he's like the leader. He's the one that brings together this fellowship, and even still, like he's the one who quote unquote sacrifices himself just so his fellowship can continue on with the journey. And even still, like Frodo, he's the one who's courageous enough to be the bearer of the ring, which I know some people say sometimes that Frodo is kind of a boring character, and he may not be like the most super interesting hero, but it's his courage, it's his bravery, the fact that he's just this little hobbit who is willing to take that responsibility of bringing the ring or carrying the ring. And even still throughout the film, there's the one scene where he he says something along the lines like he wishes that the ring never came to him. He wishes that it could have been someone else, but yeah, he still did it anyway. And even at the point where when it gets to the end, near the end of the movie, when the fellowship has fractured and he basically has to run away from Boromir, who basically, I think based on the theatrical cut, he wants to take it for evil, even though you could interpret it as it being, oh, he's just slowly being corrupted by the ring. But he feels ostracized enough to like, oh, I just need to do this on my own. But then his loyal friend Sam, he just comes up, he's like, I'm gonna stay with you like till the end, basically. Like, we're in this together. And they know that like the journey ahead of them is incredibly dangerous and treacherous, and they don't know what they're in for. And even though they're on their own now, it still brings them closer together, which I don't know. I think in the tragedy of the fellowship breaking apart, the hope is that they're still going to continue onward. And I think that as not necessarily a cliffhanger, but for a point where it's like, oh, now we're really going to get started in the second one. That's such a great way to end the film, because it obviously we were both alive when this film came out, but we were very, very young. But I couldn't imagine being, let's just say, a teenager seeing this in theaters for the first time. And if I saw that ending, I'd be like, oh, I'm so hyped for Two Towers. Like, I can't wait to see what's going to happen next. Like, what lies in store. It's such a good way to end the movie. And I think that's also why emotionally this one stands really good as its own individual film, because the other Two Towers, not to get ahead of myself, but Two Towers, where that ends, we still have another part of this grand story left. So it doesn't really necessarily end on a tragedy. It just more sort of ends on, I don't want to make this seem like it's a bad thing, but almost kind of it slowly stops, because like, okay, we're reaching the end of the movie basically. But here it does seem like there is more of a natural build up and conclusion. And I know some people people complain about like multiple part movies, be like, oh, it's just half the story and it's incomplete. But it's like, no, like what does it do thematically and emotionally that tells a well-rounded story? Like, I know people complain about Across the Spider-Verse, for example, be like, oh, it's only half the story. They were too lazy. They didn't end it. So it's on a cliffhanger. But it's like, yeah, if you look at it in that way, where that's a very one-dimensional read of the film, what does it do emotionally and thematically, is particularly with some other characters that may not be the protagonist, then it can stand on its own singularly. And I think Fellowship of the Ring does that more with the themes and emotionally with the characters in particular, because the other ones where it's like, okay, they're just throwing them into like the darkest, most horrific scenarios possible. So
Yeah, and it's sort of like insane in terms of just how it sort of just works just as its own. Because Fellowship of the Ring, because you also got to think like a lot of kids when they read Lord of the Rings, like they probably read Fellowship before every other book, obviously, and so you could probably think like maybe back in the 80s, like you were probably waiting for another edition of like the Two Towers to come out, and all you could afford was just reading Fellowship again. And so you got to like think like it does build like the anticipation of what's to come next. And the thing is like, yeah, this story in it of itself is like, yeah, it doesn't have the grand battles that Two Towers and Return of the King have, but I think it's giving us like the necessary context for what's to come next, but also it still works in terms of a thematic tone. Because the thing I always like enjoy about um, Fellowship is just sort of how there's like this camaraderie between, the Fellowship and how they sort of all interact with each other, even if it's just like for a few days. Um, but you do sort of sense like a little bit of a like tear in some of these relationships because they're getting tested. Like, we always hear those things like stories where it's like, they got to get from one place to the other. Their relationships are going to be tested. It's like, yeah, but when are we actually going to see that here? Like, we actually do sort of see them tested with one another in some cases, and especially with the Boromir character. So it's very awesome to sort of see like how these characters sort of work with one another despite like obviously being different sizes and having different like methods to violence. Like obviously like Gimli wants all in terms of jumping into defeating orcs, while the hobbits are not used to that at all. Like they're very much so like out of their element. So it's really interesting to see how they all just sort of like work together in that way, and so that camaraderie really helps the film really stands tall. And like, and it's like the performances. I know we mentioned a lot about Ian McKellen, but Viggo Mortensen's great here too. I mean, there's a lot of like when he's introduced, like we just sort of see like this ambiguous figure in the corner just smoking his pipe, and once he like once we do see him for who he is, it's like we sort of just realize like, yeah, this is somebody that I would follow in a heartbeat into battle.
Yeah.
Like you just like, and Mortensen just does such a good job bringing that characterization through, while also like bring in sort of the conflict he would have later on in the rest of the series. But like I said, the casting here is just perfect. Like I don't think you could go wrong with any of the cast here. It's just, even like for the actors that are not quite as like focused on like Hugo Weaving, it's like they all just fit these roles like perfectly. It's incredible.
I think even if I were, since I haven't read the book, if I ever were to, like, it would just be hard for me to picture, like, let's just say an illustrator's interpretation of the characters. And I would just I just see the characters from Peter Jackson's films, because they're, in my mind, they're that distinct, they're that well cast, and they're that believable as the characters. Like, there was not, every actor fit their role so well. And kind of to what we're saying about the action, it's interesting how, yeah, there is not really a big epic battle necessarily in this film, but there's a lot of interesting like scenarios that the film is putting our characters through. Like a lot in the Mines of Moria, for example, or like the one like horseback chase with when Arwen has to
Avoid the romance, right?
Yes, yeah, that scene too. But like I really like the whole chase through the mines towards the end, even though some of the green screen stuff wasn't that great, honestly, but doesn't hurt the film at all. And I also really like how in all these films too, Peter Jackson, because when he started his career, he was doing more horror films, and each one of these films has some little tinge of his horror background sort of coming back into this film, and particularly with that one like tentacle creature in the tomb. Like that was like straight up like a horror scene, basically. So it's nice to see that even with a film and with a story that is so totally serious and is so mythologically dense, Peter Jackson, he still has fun in a way, but it doesn't seem like it doesn't demean the source material. It's just the nature of, I'm a filmmaker. I want to do something that is not only cool, but fits in with the world. And in that way, if you really tell like, okay, he's having fun too while playing with this very serious source material. So I like that we get a bit of that in every scene. We also didn't talk about the music too.
Oh yeah,
the music, absolutely phenomenal. It's done by Howard Shore, and it's kind of like John Williams in Star Wars. Just, you can't not watch this film and not think about the music, because the music fits so perfectly in some of these scenes, especially when the scenes get more intense too. It's like it gets you really, really hyped. But then when we're in like more calmer scenes like the Shire or in Rivendell, it's just so peaceful and it brings out the tranquility of the environment too. And Shore's score really reflects that in a way that I don't see anyone else probably doing, aside from maybe like John Williams. Like if John Williams were to do the score for these films, it probably would have been a similar situation, but the music just fits perfectly.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, I think obviously Concerning Hobbits is like probably the most popular track, like with the very pleasant clarinet tones in it and just like the very upbeat strings. Like it does bring so much character to the Shire and, you know, this race of like little people. um, but it is very uplifting. But the thing that I was very fascinating like with the score too is like how it's able to sort of tonally fit with the scenes involving Saruman or the orcs. Like I think one scene in particular that you see the camera sort of zooming in to like this like orc camp or whatever, and it's like
Oh, I love that
traveling
shot. Yeah.
through like it's like a very wicked drone shot, but obviously like we didn't have this type of drones yet. But we did see like but we just sort of like hear the trombones going up and down and it just like it builds the tension so well. Like it's like you said with like the background that Peter Jackson had in horror and you know Howard Shore did sort of too with Silence of the Lambs as well. So it's like the fact that, you know, it works, but that background, it works so well in terms of like elevating the tension of the scene and, you know, just elevating the presence of these like very evil characters and just sort of how like everything feels so out of reach for our protagonists. It's like it's really perfect music. And I know and speaking of like cinematography, like Andrew Lesnie's cinematography, like it's just awesome. I mean, you get
Mhm.
like obviously a lot of like atmospheric wides of like, you know, the characters just sort of walking through, you know, the mountains of New Zealand and, you know, these wide epic shots as well. And you just see that, but I really enjoy like how it's able to switch like to certain angles and just like flies through these sets like so seamlessly. Like it's really impressive like how they managed to like make it feel like even though like some of these characters could be digitally put in there, it's like you still feel such a tightness in these spaces. With just these very huge like wide angle shots, but just you feel so closed in, especially in the Mines of Moria scene where you see the troll come in and it's like it all feels so crammed in. Um, like you just feel like there's nowhere else for you to go. It's like really incredible cinematography.
it it somehow manages to show off still even in tight spaces, but it never feels like it never pushes it too far where it becomes really indulgent. Like especially with just because this is Middle Earth. This is a world that is not of our reality. So of course, in order to immerse the us as an audience and believe the world that we're seeing, you need to show it off, whether it be massive wide landscapes of, let's just say, the Shire or even the enclosed space of like Saruman's tower. Like you need to show it off in a way. And to to its credit, it works because so many of these locations, like I want to live in the Shire. I want to live in Rivendell. I don't know if I want to live in the mines, but Saruman's tower, it's a pretty cool space, not gonna lie. It looks pretty dope. So it is not afraid to show off the scale, but it never goes overboard. Like it doesn't feel like, oh, the story slows down so we can show off and pad out the film. Like no, it's part of this environment because it's not something that Middle Earth isn't real. Like we need to show it off well.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, the fact that they even have these sets like still open because my cousins actually went out to New Zealand. I think it was like last year, I believe, and they actually got to see. the like physical sets of like the Hobbit
Yeah.
holes in the Shire. Like New Zealand like flight ads promote the hell out of this like film
Mm.
because that's how monumental this series was. But yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I really enjoy like how much like the set really just breathes. And I guess like we haven't really tapped much on them, but like the I think the how they sort of present the antagonists in this film are very well done as well. I mean, bringing in Christopher Lee as Saruman
Oh,
was
Saruman.
yeah like yeah perfect casting.
Mm.
I think he just has like this very menacing, deep voice that resonates like whenever he speaks like you just listen. um but it's like really impressive also with like the ring wraiths when they're like chasing the hobbits out of the Shire or whatever, and you just sort of you feel like this very eerie presence and this very like agonizing screech that they have. It's like they really just like put you on edge, just in the same way that the characters are sort of feeling. So it's like everything is just working just from a characterization level. Like I think that's like the key reason, like why these foes feel so intimidating. And Sauron not even like talked about. I mean, he's talked about, but he's not even shown in the film outside
Mm.
of maybe the prologue. So but just the way they sort of speak of him, it's like yeah, this is one bad motherfucker. You do not want to mess with him at all. You
Yeah.
know?
All the villains have a remarkable presence, just not only on screen but also in the dialogue too. Just the way the characters describe these entities, like to the heroes. You could just only imagine if you were to put yourself in the headspace of some of these characters, they'd be like, oh, so this is like a big deal, basically. With the ring too, just how the ring corrupts the characters too. I find like just really, really like kind of terrifying, especially when it shows like the one scene with Galadriel, how she turns into that like demon basically, and showing off, okay, this is what happens. Like this is how the ring can like really corrupt someone. That seems like very pure and good, and also goes to show why they just can't give the ring to just anybody. Pretty much, there is a method to how we need to destroy it, but the ring is so powerful that it can turn someone who's very kind and loyal and gentle into a monster. Maybe not in a way that's very severe, but just slowly over time corrupting the soul. And we kind of see that later on with like Frodo a bit, and also, well, obviously the epitome of that is Gollum, but I'm getting ahead of myself. But I don't know, I think even the ring is technically not. It's hard to say the ring is really like a character because it's just an object, but how it transforms everybody and puts them on this adventure is really, I find that really fascinating overall, just how much power this one little object has over everybody. And just, it's that important that all these factions groups need to settle their differences basically to destroy it. Like it carries that much weight and importance.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. I mean, I think it's it's like you just whenever you see it in a room or whenever it's presented, you just like it's like so entrancing, and you hear all these voices just kind of coming in and out. I forgot who the voice actor was who was like doing all those voices, but it feels like something that is like oddly like the characters are gravitating towards because you just want to hear what it's trying to tell people. And it it's like insane how like one little thing like just sort of is inherently evil like that. It's like you don't and I think we've seen like other examples of like this type of sort of object being this way. Like it's the MacGuffin, or it's sort of like the plot device. Like I think I guess like one of the more recent examples is Harry Potter Deathly Hallows Part One or whatever, where the three main characters just sort of stuck with like this Horcrux or whatever, that is like sort of tearing them apart as like the film goes on. Um and I know there's probably been other examples as well, and this probably isn't the first either. Like, but I think it since it is like sort of written by Tolkien, like Tolkien probably introduced this sort of idea of like this sort of inherent object that really does nothing but tear people apart. Like it is a very impressive like use that Peter Jackson sort of brings in that makes it feel like, yeah, this is just an object that you do not want to touch at all. Like, but you still want to.
Yeah, and ironically, the way the film shows off the ring is just like, wow, I want that. Like the ring looks so pretty, and I know like in close-ups they actually had like a big size, like a giant size version of the ring for the close-up, so it wasn't just a tiny little ring that they were zooming in on. So that's another clever use of filmmaking right there, using different sizes and perspectives to enlarge a small object. And yeah, even just the way like it's framed perfectly in every shot too, like your eyes just immediately go onto that ring and you just know that, oh, this is it's drawing importance to it essentially.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like it's very hard to like sort of think about anything else like to talk about Fellowship just because I think they're obviously building up with the other two, but I think like it does really stand on its own very well. In just terms of just introducing this world and the level of just craftsmanship just from the production design. Because like Peter Jackson, they created like this thing called the Weta Workshop or whatever, where they wanted to be close to as realistic as possible. I'm just looking at the Wikipedia page. Like a lot of these locations that these characters come across are real locations. So it actually helps with like the believability of like these settings and where these characters are because these are actually real places. Like it feels like you're living in a fantasy. But yeah, they're real things. It's awesome. Like
They didn't just shoot on green screen.
Nah, they didn't. I mean, you could tell like there's parts like where digital effects are used. I mean, how would they be able to get like CGI mountains to move? But you know, it's still impressive that like they managed to like blend in the practical and digital effects so well together. Like you don't really see. I mean, you see it a little bit with like the newer Disney Star Wars stuff and Dune probably, but you do not see it that often because everybody's just so hung up on CG now. So this is definitely like one of the best examples of how to use CGI, just to sort of how it can work within the realm of visual effects and what it can create. So it's awesome.
Yeah, arguably it was probably one of the last of its type because especially in the 90s when CGI was really starting to take off, they had to use it sparingly, mostly because of technological limitations, but it was primarily because, we can't have every single character be CGI, so let's just have one or two figures basically and put all of our energy into that. That's why the CGI in Jurassic Park, for example, looks so good, is because they only used it for the shots where they absolutely needed to use that for the dinosaurs. Otherwise, they still used the full-size animatronics. And with Lord of the Rings, it definitely feels like they were blending the two together because, as you said, it was shot basically all in New Zealand. A lot of it was on location. Like, yeah, when they're in like a field, for example, they're on a field. They didn't pull out the green screens basically for that and for the creatures, obviously. But even still, there's a ton of makeup. There's a ton of practical effects. There's miniatures. There's forced perspective. Like they didn't just entirely rely on the CGI, which Peter Jackson even himself, like later on in his career, became more dependent on the CGI with King Kong, for example, or even I'm sure we'll talk about this, but like the Hobbit films too. Those rely more on CGI compared to the practical nature of the Lord of the Rings films. And I think having that blend, you would think that studios or other filmmakers would look at Lord of the Rings and be like, oh, this film blended a lot of practical and digital effects better, and it looked a lot stronger for that reason. We should follow suit. But it seems like they did the opposite and they just totally embraced the digital stuff and just forgot the practical effects.
Because they knew like audiences have gotten so used to seeing that technology in the 90s that I don't know if you remember that. It was when I was like on my nostalgic binge growing up, but there was like that one video Doug Walker made about that era of the 90s where every film was basically the same or whatever. And he mentioned something about like the CGI. I mean, and yeah, just things I wouldn't like quote Doug Walker for, but this was something he did have like a really good point on, is that every film in this era was being so dependent on that technology. And, there was something where audiences were really starting to notice it. Just because after when you see it for the first time, it's like, oh, awesome. Like, yeah, that looks so real. But the more you see it, the more you sort of like see that, oh, it just isn't there, And Jackson knew that. Like, I think Jackson knew that technology, like, at least for the capabilities it would have for the time period, like, wasn't gonna be like perfect to use in every scenario. So I like how he just sort of evaluated where and when to use it while also still prioritizing the practical effects and the forced perspective shots over the digital technology, which he'll still use, but that's only just the last resort. So it's really awesome that, Jackson was very smart in how to make this world feel real.
If you're telling a story that's set primarily in a natural world, you should probably shoot it in a natural setting. Cough, cough. George Lucas with the prequels. Cough, cough. So, yeah.
I didn't know Coruscant was real.
Yeah, they shooting on green screen just on a balcony with like CGI pears. And
I think it was that one incredible Ewan McGregor meme of him just like cruising on the light speeder.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. Like for the sci-fi cities, yeah, obviously those aren't real. But if you're in a desert, like deserts exist,
I guess we just go into final thoughts before we hit up on the Two Towers. But yeah,
Fellowship, excellent start to the story. Arguably, out of the entire trilogy, probably stands the best on its own. Like if you were to just for some reason only watch one, it's probably this one you should watch. And I would not well, I know you watched Return of the King first, but I don't know. I think this is one where if you decided only to watch one of them, you should definitely watch this one. Really excellent world building, really great emotional moments and stakes, excellent performances all around. Just it's a great start to a great adventure. And yeah, I don't know, there's really not much else to add. It's just an excellent movie. So 9 out of 10. It was better than I remember it.
Yeah, it's better than I remember too. I think 9 out of 10 for me as well. I think, it just knows how to set up the story, these characters, while also bringing us to a world that feels real. And in some cases is like, like I said before, the Shire is an actual visitable set over in New Zealand. So like you could tell just the level of craftsmanship Peter Jackson and Richard Taylor, the production designer, really brought to this world. And of course, with some very phenomenal visual effects that still hold up very well. I think it's really hard not to dispute the level of impact that these have had, not just from a digital standpoint, but a practical standpoint as well. And overall, it's just a really gripping start to an excellent story. So yeah, definitely 9 out of 10. So, and then the journey continues.
1 year later.
What's up?
1 year later.
1 year later. I guess a good thing to know about these films, and I guess you could say it is still sort of done now, is that these films were filmed, all three of these were filmed back to back. So 17 days after Fellowship premiered, they went all the way into production for the Two Towers. So they were pretty much like going all out, getting these released every year. So like in terms of franchise filmmaking, that does leave sort of an impact, especially since we see all these back-to-back part one and part two films happening. So it was a very, very influential in terms of that. But the journey continues into Two Towers after the Fellowship has been broken up. So Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas are trying to find the riders of Rohan and get them to join in on a mended alliance, while Frodo and Sam continue their journey all the way to Mordor with a special guest who looks like a guy on the street you would find in Portland, Oregon. But regardless, but yeah, what are your thoughts on Two Towers?
Yeah, Two Towers. It's a great follow up. I, in memory, preferred this over Fellowship of the Ring. However, I think now I would say this is probably quote unquote the weakest of the trilogy, but it's still a great movie overall. In a way, The Two Towers is probably the hardest one to adapt because, as you said, this is when all the characters are in their own separate storylines. Unless I'm mistaken, not one of them really overlap, right? Am I?
Yeah, they don't really overlap at all. No.
So it's basically three movies going on simultaneously, which that in and of itself is such a difficult thing to accomplish in the film. And I think if we're talking about like the editing of it, it's edited spectacularly. Like it makes sense. However, just as in a personal opinion, I think there are some storylines in this film that I greatly prefer over others. So I love the stuff with Gollum and Frodo and Sam. That to me is the highlight of the movie. Gollum is hard. It's hard to say who like my favorite character is in this entire franchise, but Gollum arguably might be the one just because it shows this incredible character development, how he went from Smeagol, how he got the ring, and how it just totally reduced him into this lonely, like split personality, like just little goblin basically, and just how he's so power hungry for the ring and he'll do anything to get that, even like destroying other people apart by corrupting them and manipulating them. Like he's such a great villain with a perfect design basically, and once again groundbreaking visual effects. It was Andy Serkis and the motion capture, which was this like the first motion capture for CGI like ever?
I don't know if it was the first motion capture, but I do believe it was like one of the very, very most popular instances, like the one where people started to use motion capture technology more in the films in filmmaking. So, but yeah, this is definitely like one of the early instances of like motion capture technology, at least in terms of how it's being used as digital effects.
Yeah, and it still looks great. It still looks really, really good. So I love all that stuff. The plot line with Aragorn and what was it? Sorry, I'm like looking up the Wikipedia because it's one of those.
Oh, the Riders of Rohan.
The Rider, yes, the Riders of Rohan. That's good too because it leads to arguably the best battle in the entire franchise, the Battle of Helm's Deep. One of the most legendary screen battles of all time. Just the choreography, the atmosphere, just how many extras are on the set, the visual effects. It's spectacular. It's just spectacular buildup. But then the stuff with Merry and Pippin with Treebeard and the Ents is like, I really just, I don't want to say don't care about because it's not like it's awful, but it's the one part of the film where I just really do not latch onto. I find it I find it a little dull, honestly, which I know sounds sacrilegious to say anything in the Lord of the Rings is dull, but it's the one part of the film where I just really struggle to, like, once it cuts to that point, I'm just like, I'm not really into this one as much. So this film has some of the best parts of the entire franchise, but also quote unquote some of the worst. And I don't mean to throw any shade towards the film because overall it's still excellent, but there are some points in this one where I do find myself being a little less attached compared to some of the other scenes and even just in comparison with the rest of the trilogy. But it does, I think overall, like this is one where kind of like I was saying, just how hard it was to adapt. I have a lot of admiration and respect for Jackson and his team for even adapting it as well as it does, because it's a tall order to balance all these storylines together, and the fact that it was even successful in of itself is worthy of praise. So yeah, it's still very, very good.
Don't mind the storyline between Merry and Pippin and the trees that much. I think it does sort of bring an interesting element to the world a little bit. Just sort of like this idea of like these trees sort of being all mystical, but they're sort of like a little bit like past their time. Um, so it is very interesting in how like those that characterization is made, and there's sort of like an interesting sort of theme about like man versus nature, or man teaming up with nature in it. Because oddly enough, like the environmental element of it, like actually is somewhat effective. It doesn't come off like preachy like all those '90s environmental films that were everywhere at that time, but like it is very well like used in terms of how it sort of shows like the idea of nature, because I think nature is a huge part of like these films, and it's a huge part of this world. So I think it is very interesting that it does sort of dive into it just a little bit more. um but yeah, it does sort of take things to like a screeching halt whenever it kind of cuts back to that story, just because it, even though it is like essential, because obviously they're not saying they were never essential. Obviously, they sort of led to Saruman's downfall,
Mhm.
but it's also kind of like the one story where it's like it just sort of slows things down a little bit too much. But I still think there's a lot to still like there about it. Because the rest of the film, to me, is freaking amazing.
Oh,
I think,
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, I think it is very gutsy to sort of have this sort of continuing story with these three separate storylines, but you still sort of feel this level of momentum, that is sort of leading into the eventual arrival at Mordor. So it is it's incredible just kind of seeing how these characters sort of split apart from one another, the fellowship split apart from one another, and just seeing how it's all sort of built on top of each other, and how like so much of it real, and it's still the cast. Like the cast is still delivering all excellent performances. I think Andy Serkis is a very welcome addition to this cast. I mean, it's incredible just the level of visual effects that is just brought in, because you don't really like see, because I know people like can easily point out the CGI, but there's like moments where it's like this, you see them touch Gollum or whatever, and it's like this feels so real to me.
Hmm.
Like it's really hard not to you know be gripped and be like amazed by this character just from his presence alone. And yeah, like people make fun of like the whole like voice changing the voice, and the split personality, but it really does sort of like build into like the whole idea of how this ring has like impacted somebody who's like owned it for over 500 years. And because hobbits like age very slowly, but it is like impressive, and how you sort of see like it sort of become this level of addiction for him. And the motion capture, like, because I guess like they brought in the makeup artist, and they actually showed him like how to apply like sort of the techniques they would use for like a costume or a special effects makeup for, and just sort of how to use it on a computer, just to sort of like see the textures are right. They actually had some models of the character they would um like hand make, just so that way they could be
Oh,
sure that the skin textures were correct, and that the eyes were the right size. So it's really impressive on how they managed to just really boost the size of these characters. Like it's really really impressive on how they just continue to make these visual effects just really stand out. And the fact that this is like almost a, almost a 25-year-old film, and the
That's
motion capture technology still looks amazing. Like
that's
it's
crazy.
incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So if I don't know if I misheard, but some people don't like the Gollum voice. Is
I wouldn't say
that
they
a
like the
criticism?
voice, but I think people just sort of like make fun of the voice a lot just because like,
Oh,
it's like so graspy, and people like making fun of like, the way he sounds. And yeah, like we've seen it parodied. Like, I mean, like every popular film, like Lord of the Rings, was heavily parodied around the 2000s, and the Gollum aspect is definitely the one that's parodied a lot. But voice crack. But it is still a very like gripping, graspy voice. Like it really does sort of sound like aged in some way. Like it's a
yeah.
really awesome.
I've noticed with like Lord of the Rings with the memes, it seems like it's more admiration. People aren't like ridiculing it. They're not making fun of it, but it's more just because of how much they love the films. And these lines are so quotable. So why would you not use them in memes? So yeah. I also just want to say too that this movie has such an incredible opening. Like cutting to Gandalf, which shows when he's falling down the hole and like killing the Balrog. What a awesome, just badass way to start the movie, and it starts like right away too. I wrote down like I'd be imagine if you walked into the theater late and you missed that entire scene. I would be pissed, to tell you the truth, because it's such a great way to start the film, and also hint at like what really happened down there, because we assuming you didn't read the books, you're led to believe that Gandalf, he's dead. He's not coming back. But it's like, did he survive? Is he coming back? Like, it's planting that seed early on. And then he does come back, sort of. Like, it's more like like a spiritual entity, essentially. But yeah, it's just like, I love how it immediately just kicks into high gear right away. Just like, oh, yeah, this is how we're starting the Lord of the Rings sequel. And then it picks back up with the adventures. So it's a really good segue in terms of it. Obviously, it assumes that you've watched the first film, and it doesn't really feel the need to like over explain anything. It just picks up right where it left off. And I like how, as a trilogy, obviously this was filmed all at one time as telling one large story, but it really does feel like this is just a continuation. This doesn't feel like, the first film was successful, we got to greenlight a sequel because it made a lot of money. That's obviously that wasn't the case. If it's a natural continuation, and it puts the characters in even more dangerous and frightening circumstances too. Like not even just introducing Gollum, but even some of the scenes like the dead bodies that are in the water too is like pretty terrifying. And even like just the other like when Merry and Pippin get captured by the orcs at the end of Fellowship, and them being almost like eaten alive by the orcs too. It's like it's scary. There's some moments in these films that are really kind of terrifying, and in a way, I'm kind of glad I didn't see them as a kid because I probably would have been traumatized. But yeah, I like how it's not afraid to go to those dark places, and that's even more seen in Return of the King. But right away, it shows that things are getting serious now. Like the first one, we're starting off the adventure, it's getting fine, but now it's like, okay, they're really testing the limits of what these characters are gonna confront.
Yeah, and I think it's very like smart of them and how they just sort of continue on that dark tone. Because sometimes like when people kind of compare sequels to the predecessor, it's like, oh, this one's more darker than the other, or it doesn't maintain the same tone. This one completely maintains its same tone. Like I said, like 17 days after Fellowship premiered, they went back into production. Like they knew that they had to keep everything consistent. The only thing that I believe changed, like at least from a principal crew wise, was the editors. I think they
The
initially had
editors changed.
different. Yeah, I think they had like different head editors. So like this one's edited by Michael Horton, and then the other one's edited like Fellowship's edited by John Gilbert. But regardless,
It's
like
interesting.
everybody's pretty much remained the same in terms of like, director, screenwriter, cinematographer, music. It's like everything remains the same. So they kept it all relatively consistent. So like it doesn't feel you don't feel like tonal whiplash if it's like changed so much. So I do find that I think that's like a big reason why everything just sort of start feels like that continuation is because they kept all everybody they needed to keep for this next film, and it's awesome. Like I think they really do a good job in terms of maintaining that balance between levity and these very dark places. You sort of feel like these heroes are more vulnerable than ever. And it's like these moments of like, just pure vulnerability further amplify the moments of success. Like when these characters like get out of these situations, you like, it's like, hell yeah, that's what I want. That's the success I want to see. Like it's awesome. And I think like one of my favorite parts of like this film too is the introducer when they introduced writers of Rohan. And they're I think you get to see them in the true form like in Return of the King, but here it's like it's very awesome to sort of like see how how, like this king Theoden played by the late Bernard Hill, and how he just sort of I believe like yeah Bernard Hill, is he still alive? Okay, yeah, he passed away. But yeah, this King Theoden played by Bernard Hill, like just has this like presence about him. Like not like a mysticism, but somebody's like, yeah, this guy is the real deal, and he's a king, and he feels like a king. Like there's moments where you sort of feel like there's a mistrust between him and Aragorn, but I think the more it goes on, you sort of like get to see him sort of like gravitate toward this idea of Aragorn being this one true king in some cases, and but you still feel like that personality, like he just oozes the level of screen presence that everybody else oozes. And I especially also love Brad Dourif as Grandma Wormtongue. Like
Yeah.
the makeup guy, man, like it like makes him look so yucky, and just like his hair is all wet, his skin is just pale. It like he comes off as a very slimy personality, which is like, how do you wonder this man got his job um, as like an aide to the king? Like, yeah, you look like the guy to help our king. like, but yeah, it's really impressive. Like the casting just works so well. Even with like the new players they bring in with like Bernard Hill, Brad Dourif, Miranda Otto, and Carl Urban in one of his more early film roles. Like
I,
it's very impressive in how
I totally
they
forgot he was in this movie.
yeah. It's like I kept thinking of his character in the boys while like watching him in this film. It's like, oh, like yeah, that's the guy that's going to be shouting the c word a lot in a TV show 20 years down the road. But um, but yeah, it's crazy. Like just the cast is just still perfect, and like everybody just envelops these roles like the way they should. But yeah, back to that opening. Like it's such a heavy metal opening. Like in terms of getting you right into this film. And then I think the reintroduction of like Gandalf, except in like a different form, like Gandalf the
Mhm.
White, is just perfect. Like everybody's like you sort of like feel this like different level of Gandalf now than he was in the first film. Like it's really impressive on how they sort of present him in here.
Yeah, it's interesting how it gets a bit confusing too, because I know some people they say like, oh, it's Gandalf quote unquote comes back, but it's a different version of Gandalf. So like, yes, it's like a yes and no. He does come back, but they're both like very distinct enough, like Gandalf the White compared to Gandalf the Gray. Like Gandalf the White, he's arguably a little more like serious overall and just sort of more no nonsense. And that you kind of need that more when the stakes are getting this high, especially when he's like leading this battle, essentially leading on more into the next film. Um, I do really like how, even though this film is very tonally serious and very dark, the moments of comedic levity more with Gimli, I think, are earned. And I think, I mean, Gimli's a pretty funny character, but just the little one-liners he has, like, or when he's kind of like falling down hills, or when he's in the Battle of Helm's Deep, when he's like, you could have picked a better spot. He's just like, you can't even see over the gate or whatever. I was like, it's needed. Like you kind of, it's it's not like Marvel quips, but they're like little tiny sprinklings where it feels good enough because yeah, it's if there was no humor, it would just be a really dour, seriously toned, borderline depressing film to sit through. And yeah, you do need that. I also like too how I'm more going back to the Gollum storyline, but also how Sam is basically being more and more. He sees the side of Gollum that's like he sees through him pretty much. Just yeah, he's manipulating us, he's lying to us, he just wants the ring. But Frodo's purity and innocence, which I think that's a good trait of him. Like he's trustworthy. He's a good friend, but that's almost his fault with Gollum because he does feel bad for the creature, but also is a bit naive to see like, yeah, maybe he's going to do something bad to us. And Sam sees right through him. And I like that conflict too, because it also shows where like the loyalty lies as well. And in a way you feel bad for both sides. You feel bad for Sam because obviously he doesn't feel like he doesn't feel believed basically, even though he knows it's to be true. But then at the same time, what I think makes Gollum a good character and a good villain is the sympathy. Like he's not just, oh, he was born evil and that's all his motivation is. He's not one dimensional. We see why he wants the ring and how it really just totally corrupted his psyche, his mental state, his physical state too. And it's tragic. And that's why I think he's such a interesting antagonist in the story and just overall too. So I think for that reason, I know it's kind of reductive to say, but just the fact that the presence of Gollum in that storyline is what really makes me gravitate more towards that part of the film overall is really just him.
Yeah, it's like it's nice to have him as like this sort of split personality because in the book it was sort of like somewhat of like a division in his mind. Like he was very split in terms of like, should I help these guys or should I actually do it for my own trait? But here they actually like really have a lot of fun with the whole split personality part of him, where it's like one is, the Schmeagol character is much more like childlike and innocent, while the Gollum character is just like completely like evil. So it's like it's sort
the
of
devil
like
on the shoulder.
Yeah, that's what it sort of feels like throughout this like characters, like you just sort of feeling like he's so divided on what he's actually wanting to do. Like, yeah, these guys are just innocent. They're trying to, they want to get rid of the thing that is like killing us. Like, and the other side's like, no, it's like we need to have this thing. This is for ourselves. It's like it's a very good way of like really presenting like an antagonistic character as like somebody super sympathetic. So I think that that's a great way of just creating a very sympathetic like antagonist. It's awesome, but obviously like we got to get into the Helm's Deep here. Like yeah, definitely one of the best battles like we've ever seen in like any action film, at least at this time. Like, it's incredible just the scale of which they sort of just bring things up. Like, this is what we want to see out of Lord of the Rings. Like, there's people like watching Fellowship, like, thinking, oh, where's the grand battle? Here it is. It's like it's coming in its glory. And there's a lot of interesting things about like this battle. I know you mentioned the levity part of it, which actually does help. I mean, I know you mentioned Gimli's like sort of like humorous presence, but I also sort of like how Legolas sort of like reacts to Gimli, where it's like, you think I could have picked a better spot. It's like, oh, do you want me to describe it for you, or should I get you a box to stand on? Like, yeah, it's good moments of levity, or like even destroying him right into a horde of orcs, incredible. But
Mhm.
just the way like all these action set pieces are just built on top of one another is incredible. And yeah, sometimes impractical, like Legolas going shield surfing down the stairs, but how can you not? Like, it's awesome. Like, it's really awesome just to see like a battle like this, and you do feel it just like wear on you, like in moments of just sort of like breaking away from it, whether going to the Merry and Pippin storyline or back to Frodo. It's like you just still and you just feel like this battle's like going on for days. Like
Mhm.
that's what it feels like, something that's just never gonna end. And it's really impressive, like we haven't tapped on it, but the passage of time and how this journey just starts to feel longer and longer, despite the fact that you could you could argue like, oh, maybe it's just in a few days. Like, no, it actually feels like you've been at it for like months and months. And just the way this battle sort of presents like just the longevity is really incredible. Like, it's and how like perilous, like the protagonist really sort of feel, where they're just grabbing people that are not even soldiers. They're grabbing farmhands and children to kind of help out. It's really insane, just like how that level of desperation leads to like an even more impressive feat of action. It's awesome.
This one feels more like a war film almost. Not only just with Helm's Deep overall, but even just how all the, kind of like you're saying, the everyday folk of Middle Earth, like just the calm, collected like villagers being brought out of their tranquil lives and into this war almost. It's like a World War I parallel, which I know Tolkien. I'm not really familiar with Tolkien as a person, and also to get into the thematic and allegorical elements of the Lord of the Rings, we'll literally be here all day. But there is a lot of World War I subtext to this one, I feel like, particularly with the battle and how there's a sense of that, okay, people being ripped out of their everyday lives and thrust into just like violence and terror is like really, really striking. And I think this film does communicate that really well. It goes to show that just, yeah, the steps to get what seemed like a quote unquote simple goal led to this battle basically. And it's really, really striking too. With Helm's Deep also, just the obviously the fight choreography is immaculate, but also the miniature set design too is really impressive. Most of Helm's Deep is a miniature, and the blending of the real life actors, the miniatures, the digital effects is all really, really seamless. And because this is also taking place at night in the rain, they're able to better hide that too. So the imperfections don't really seem to infringe upon the believability of everything. So it's all, that part is incredibly well thought out, on top of just serving as a really great climactic conclusion to this particular film overall. And yeah, I love the shots of like the ladders rising up over the wall. Something about like the sort of synchronicity of it just goes to like, yeah, these are groups that they had a plan going in, like this is what they wanted to do in order to scale the wall and then start fighting. So yeah, everything felt believable too. It's not just, oh, feed me action scene for Hollywood movies sort of thing. It serves a purpose in the story too, which is the best part of any good action film. Is like, yeah, I want to see cool stuff on screen, but I also want to care about the characters simultaneously. This film does it very well.
Yeah, it's definitely like what you want out of it. And like, and I guess like there was also like a pretty like fun factoid about like this film. Oh, I don't know if it was fun for the actor, but Viggo Mortensen actually
Oh.
like injured his. I believe it's like what he broke his toe and he kicked.
Mm-hmm.
And there was like a scene where he kicked his helmet across the ground, and
Yeah.
apparently he like fought through it, and the take where he actually did like break his toe was used in the film. So that moment of just pure pain and anguish is coming from the fact that he like broke his toe. So like it just kind of shows like how they managed to just like make this like the level of like dedication even through all that is just impressive to me. Like you don't, I mean, you see it often, like scenes that were not meant to be that way become something else, like Heath Ledger in the Dark Knight, um when he was trying to blow up the hospital, but
Yeah.
they had a detonation delay or whatever, and then they used that take because it was sort of humorous, but it worked very well. It's like it's insane like when you see those scenes like happen, and it's like wow, it's really awesome. But yeah, he like Mortensen like received a whole bunch of injuries. Like apparently he chipped his tooth in one scene. Bernard
Oh,
Hill did get his ear slashed at one point. Like it's crazy. So it's really awesome. Like, it's insane that, the level of dedication that we sort of see from these actors, especially in these action scenes. And regardless, like probably one of the biggest like action spectacles you're ever going to see in a sequel, at least at this time. So it's really awesome, that level of dedication.
how do you feel about one of the criticisms, if we want to talk about criticisms of the film, and I say this loosely because it's kind of more of a nitpick, but Legolas being too perfect, how he doesn't struggle, he has no characterization other than the fact that he just is a perfect shot at everything. How do you feel about that?
I don't mind it. And it adds to,
Yeah, neither do I.
yeah, it's like it's entertainment value. I mean, I know, I guess we're sort of referencing Doug Walker's like video
Oh,
on like,
did he mention that?
yeah, he had like a whole video of like top 11 like you know very like, it wasn't like underwhelming, but like worst things about the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and he
Worst
put,
things about
yeah, I don't know if it was like a worst things, I forgot what the
I'm gonna
video
look
was
this up.
titled, but he had like a whole video just sort of detailing like like the weaker elements of these films, and a lot of that like and he
Oh,
has some valid criticisms in places. I'm not gonna say he didn't, but the
top
whole Legolas stuff is sort of
top
I don't
11
know.
dumbest Lord of the Rings moments is
Yeah,
the video.
11 dumbest. Okay, yeah.
Dumbest.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's dumb. I think it's awesome. I mean, to be honest, like, if you're gonna, the thing is, like, especially if it's for like a fantasy action film, you want to have those moments of just like entertainment value. And, Legolas and Gimli, like, purely provide that in these films. Like, I know people like, oh, sometimes like Gimli's a little too stupid, but it's like, honestly, I don't mind it. It adds a bit of levity, which is needed for like these type of battles. Like it doesn't feel too
Mhm.
over exaggerated, and like I said, there's not really much of a tonal whiplash when you see these moments happen. They actually feel earned, and yeah, you could say like Legolas isn't the most like in depth character, but it's it's still a character that's easy to latch onto. Like you see, he's very dedicated to Aragorn, and I like how just people sort of make jokes about like the fact, oh, he's probably gay for Aragorn, which interesting interpretation. I don't know. I mean, there could be some queer coding in there, which is awesome. But I do think it's I think it's very awesome to sort of just see a character like being that level of just like awesome, just like shield surfing and just having a shield slice a guy's head in half. Like it's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, yeah. In a way, he's sort of like a necessary part of the company to have someone who is that skilled. But I know people who nitpick to be like, "Oh, just give him the ring. He'll defeat it, no problem." But it's like, well, we already established that if they give the ring to the elves, like they're probably more easily corrupted, like all the other
Mhm.
characters. Which is why Frodo is the one who takes the ring because he's so pure. So yeah, I think I would be more inclined to side with that if Legolas was the main hero. If he was the main protagonist and he didn't struggle at all, then yeah, then that's boring. But considering he's a side part, it's fine. And like you said, how can you not deny that the shield surfing is one of the coolest things ever put on film? Like it's so awesome.
Oh yeah, yeah. I really enjoy it. And back to like sort of the feminine like Legolas stuff. So when I was like watching these films, and this is a shout out, but I was listening to Riff Tracks. They, if for those who don't know, Riff Tracks includes Kevin Murphy, Bill Corbett, and forgot the other guy's name, but it's three of them, and if any of those names sound familiar at all, it's because those are the guys that were behind MST3K, or Mystery Science Theater 3000. So it's Michael J. Nelson, Kevin Murphy, and Bill Corbett. So yeah, those are the three main guys. But yeah, they're like a huge part of Mystery Science Theater 3000. The film where the show where they basically riff on B movies or whatever. But they actually have this app called Riff Tracks where you could sync up a comedic like audio commentary track to a film you're watching. And note, they don't have like every film. Like they've actually, I don't know, they've seemed like they've been cutting back a little bit for a while. But they still do some touring. But they do have the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy for the theatrical cuts. And then, so these are a ball to listen to. Sometimes I do turn them off, like just because, I want to get intrigued to the story, but they do, for the most part, they don't distract that often from the film you're watching. But most of the time, you're just like laughing along with them. But one of the jokes they made with like Legolas was just like, I sense a girl prettier than me. I must kill her. like one of pretty funny. They have a lot of really funny ones throughout the Lord of the Rings trilogy. But yeah, these guys are awesome. But it does sort of boost the experience. But not essential if you just want to watch the movie and not hear commentary. It's pretty funny though.
The love triangle with Aragorn and Eowyn and Arwen, I think it's a little. It seems a little more shoehorned. Like I see sort of the intent of it, sort of the feelings that Aragorn might have while like on this long journey, but it just, I don't know. I feel like these films may was this in the book?
I don't recall. I know Eowyn was a character in the book. I don't know. Admittedly, it's been a while since I've read the book. But I know she was a significant part. I'm just trying to remember, because the book is dense, guys. Like it's a dense book. But yeah, she was.
Yeah, so even if it wasn't in the book, or let's say it was touched on like more like minimally, it just seemed like the way the film was interpreting it felt a little too over. I think they could have been a little more subtle, and it sort of distracted from or more the tension. Like that one, yeah, it seemed like Jackson had a lot of free reign, but that one sort of, to me, it read like, oh, a studio was like, hey, can you like try and like put a little romance in here? I don't know. It's the one part of the film where I really felt like, oh, if there was a way to trim some of that out, I think it would have improved it slightly. But that's just me personally. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah. So yeah, she initially in the book she did fall in love with Aragorn. I'm not trying to remember how like emphasized it was in the book. But I guess like it is a part of the book that not really too keen on either. I mean, I think it's just probably like where maybe it wants to kind of show this level, like, how much Aragorn like is sort of like this sort of dashing hero in some cases. And Eowyn is falling in love with him. But I don't know if it's like something that needed to be that emphasized in the film at all. I mean, I guess it, you want to say do feel the impact of like, oh, did Aragorn die before they reached Helm's Deep at all? But I don't know. I don't think it was like something that felt shoehorned in, because I do believe it was in the book. but I just don't know if it like translates that well. I think that's a part maybe Jackson could have buffed out, but I don't know. To me, it doesn't distract too much. I do actually like the Aowen character in the film, and
Mm.
I think she does even get better. I think she gets better in Return of the King too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think Miranda Otto does a pretty good job, all things considered. So, but I guess like for me, it probably, yeah, I guess I wouldn't mind if they took it out. But I guess like what else would you do with this character at the end of the day? So I guess it was a more case like Jackson at least had to flesh her out before she disguises herself in the next film. But I think it. But yeah, I think the whole idea of the whole idea of like her falling in love with Aragorn, like, yeah, it was in the book, but I guess like they could have maybe de-emphasized it or maybe just like had a better way of building a relationship in some cases. But I don't know. I think it's still, I don't know. I guess like in turns, like she is a little more romantic in Jackson's version than Tolkien's version, but I guess they probably should have either just went away with it or find a way to make it work, but I don't think it was going to work. So
Yeah, it's like I said, it's not a detrimental flaw, but it's just something that I noticed where, unlike the other two films, where so much of it I just feel like is very well realized and thought out. It doesn't seem like, oh, you could trim it out. Really, this one was one where I don't know, it felt a little more shoehorned in, but yeah, that's just me personally. Anything else about Two Towers?
don't think
Did we miss
so.
anything?
I don't think we missed anything. I mean, I think this basically does what it needs to do. I think it is certainly the one that is, oddly enough, it feels the most I wouldn't say condensed, but it is like the one that feels like kind, I don't know, I wouldn't say like an endgame-ish film, but more sort of in the realm of like, you have all these things going on at once. But it feels like a complete package in some cases. Like I think it still works pretty well as a sequel. I mean, it's obviously a great sequel. I think it really works beautifully. I really enjoy the characters and how they all sort of present themselves and this continuation. The introduction of Gollum's obviously amazing. And yeah, I mean, it still gives us like one of the most epic battles we'll ever see in any film. And yeah, it's awesome. So yeah, probably to me, honestly, it's 10 out of 10
Hmm.
personally, but there are issues, but I don't know. I think those issues don't distract me too much. So
Yeah, it. I know I sounded a lot more harsh on it, but I really don't. I really want to stress that this is still a really great movie, and also just knowing that this was probably. I can't imagine just how much of a challenge it was to adapt this from the book to the screen, because it's the middle chapter. This is where the last one leads up on, but also we have to build up to the climactic finale where things like the stakes are raised even further. So given all the and juggling the three storylines, it's still an impressive film overall. It just happens to have some of the weakest elements of the trilogy in my personal opinion. And in memory too, I do think I don't remember what was cut out of this version, like for the extended cut. I know in the extended cut there was more stuff with Boromir, like in flashbacks, and I
yeah,
think
they
wasn't
included
Denethor?
Denethor was in it, I believe.
Hmm.
So I said admittedly, it has also been a long time since I saw the cut of Two Towers. But yeah, Denethor was in the extended cut. So, and I think it was just more or less just sort of give a little more background as they're because eventually in the film, Frodo and Sam get caught by Denethor, not Denethor's. Oh, Denethor's son, but Boromir's brother, Theomer. So,
Hmm.
or Faramir, I believe that's the name. There's a lot of mirrors, but yeah, he is a. But yeah, I do believe there's a little more explanation into Boromir's backstory, a little bit like that he had a brother.
Hmm.
But Yeah, that's like the only thing I can remember about the extended cut. Although it is the thing about these extended cuts is like they're an hour and a half longer than the films. Like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think Two Towers is still technically the shortest of the three. It's like 3 hours compared to 3 hour 28 and the 3.5 hour for Return of the King. So it is like the shorter one, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see why that stuff was cut out in
Mm.
the extended cut. So yeah. So I guess probably the theatrical. It's either I guess the theatrical cut might be slightly better than the extended cut for Two Towers. Also in hindsight, but yeah, no. Overall, still very good. I would give it an 8 out of 10. It's a high 8. I was tempted to give it a 9, despite my complaints, but I think a high 8 is very good. So yeah,
Awesome.
now the trilogy capper.
Yeah, the ultimate capper of cappers. That's Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. Basically the same story, but it's like all these plots are sort of combining into one significant conclusion. And I think this is something I did mention earlier. This was the film that basically won the Oscar for the Academy Award for Best Picture back in 2003, which is a significant achievement not just for the fantasy genre but for blockbusters in general. I mean, I think of course, had Titanic in 1997. Too, and you could maybe argue that like something like Silence of the Lambs or Chariots of Fire was that way too. But I think this is the one where, in terms of modern blockbuster filmmaking, this is probably the last of its kind to like get this level of recognition. I think we've been close in recent years with Dune and Avatar from 2009 and Mad Max Fury Road, but Lord of the Rings sort of like remains the one in at least the modern era of filmmaking that has been able to achieve the Academy Award for Best Picture and
Mm-hmm.
swept it. Like 11
Yeah.
awards. Like it swept every single category. Like the industry just fell in love with this conclusion. Does it hold true for you, Matthew?
I I would say so too. Yeah, it is an incredible conclusion to the trilogy. It it probably is still my favorite, and I say that just because I think, like I said, what I love about Fellowship is I love a lot of the world building, the build up, and how it does really feel emotionally. It feels very distinct, but by God, the ending of Return of the King is one of the most satisfying and fulfilling and just beautiful things probably ever put on film. It's just such a perfect way to end the trilogy because this film, like Two Towers, has a lot in terms of, okay, not only are we building up to this battle, showing and also showing Frodo and Sam trying to get rid of the ring, but also we got to wrap up all these storylines. And this film really does that efficiently, even within the, was it 3.5 hour runtime. I feel like it's very well paced. It doesn't really like linger either. So yeah, and it's as an achievement for like the awards, like it winning all those Oscars, it's definitely one of the, I wouldn't say one of the few times, but it's like the industry clearly saw this and recognized, yeah, this is an important achievement. This has to be recognized. So in that regard, I don't think there's many people that say like, oh, it was like a quote unquote pity award or anything, but it's like, it's just an incredible film. Like, removed from the fact that this was a daunting task to adapt The Lord of the Rings and doing it in this manner, but just if we're talking about how it's structured, how it's paced, the performances, the technical achievement, like it's all there. Like with all the elements of a great film are in Return of the King. So yeah, it's no wonder why the Academy recognized it for that because it was worthy of it. It was definitely worthy of all those awards that it was nominated and won for. And yeah, likewise, this film was crazy successful too. I think it was like, no, it wasn't the highest. It was the second highest grossing film of all time when it was released as well. So yeah, this was the game changer, definitely. And yeah, and I just love how this film goes into the darkest, most intense and like brooding elements of the story, yet also has the most, there's so many moments in the movie where if, even though I was just watching at home, like I just wanted to like cheer. I'm just like, yeah, like that's so awesome that this character did this, or when it introduces certain scenes, just like, oh, we're getting into this part. Like it's such a, it gets you really hyped. And then, but even then, by the time we get to that conclusion, it really does feel like you went on a journey. Like this is not just a film, this was an adventure. And when all the characters reunite, it just, you feel so happy and it's so satisfying. Like, yeah, they won, they achieved their goal. And to see that in this film, like by the end of it, it's just, man, it's the greatest feeling like ever. Honestly, it's such a great way to conclude. And yeah, excellent.
Yeah, it's I mean, you can't go wrong. Like I said, this is actually was my introduction to this trilogy. At the time, I had not seen Fellowship and Two Towers, so this was like the one I watched. And yeah, it's incredible. I mean, I know you said like Fellowship works very much on its own, which I mean, yeah, it does. I mean, I think that's the one that you could say is the most complete story. But I think Return of the King comes a pretty comes pretty close as well. I think it's really amazing in how this like the fact that you're able to latch on to these characters pretty easily, and you're sort of seeing them like, and you see like everything feeling so dire in the beginning. Like you see Frodo and Sam like running out of food. You know, you see like Mary and Pippin's like relationship getting tested a little bit more. Um, and you just sort of see Aragorn starting to like, have the conflict about Arwen, and, how the fact that her fate is sort of tied to the ring, and, is she willing to give up her immortality just for him? And so there's a lot of character dynamics happening in the beginning. And yeah, it feels like it's a lot, and it certainly is. I mean, it's a 3.5 hour fantasy epic, but I think it still is pretty effective in that character drama, and sort of like making you feel like that the whatever is going to happen is going to affect these characters for the rest of their lives. And by the time you hit Minas Tirith and the battle starts, it's like it's pretty much all hell breaks loose. You're going to get some of the best blockbuster action you're ever going to see in any film. I know people talk about portals and Endgame, but I think that scene has a lot to thank to the battles here in Return of the King. Like, you have no other way of topping these battles. Like, every single character moment feels earned. Every single emotion feels earned. It doesn't feel like this film is wasting any time, despite the fact that it's 3 hours and 30 minutes. It's just incredible. And by the time we hit those endings, it's like just feel satisfied. It is just something that you're never going to see in any type of modern film again. It's going to be replicated. People are going to try to top it all the time. Like I said, Marvel tried doing it, but I don't know. I do not feel that satisfaction in the way that I felt the satisfaction here. It's just incredible.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of where to even follow up, because you summed it up very perfectly. I just can't imagine what it must have been like. Like, some people say like, oh, what movie would you want to see in a theater like for the first time, like like first run opening night? This might be the one, honestly. Like, it's either this or maybe, I don't know. I probably want to say Empire Strikes Back, but people hated that movie when it came out. But I don't know. Return of the King is one where I just cannot imagine the hype energy of like sitting in that theater when like the title card comes up, and just what lies in store for the next 3.5 hours. Like, it just seeing it all come together after being so invested in the characters is not only satisfying, but also cinematically how it flows as a film too really, really works. And I think I really loved the intro of the film, how it starts with Smeagol too, which I found interesting because before the other day I started watching the Ralph Bakshi film. I had never seen it, but that film begins. It has like narration, but it starts off with Smeagol and his brother basically fighting over the ring, which I don't know if that's how the book actually starts with those descriptions, but I find it interesting that they put it at the beginning of this movie to show Gollum's ultimate transformation, because in this film, Gollum goes full, like he goes crazy basically. He just wants the ring at all costs and ultimately quote unquote destroys the friendship between Frodo and Sam. And yeah, like that tension is really, really good too, and just really goes to show like how manipulative Gollum can be, and just the desperate lengths of him like sort of squealing like a kid, and just because that's all he wants. He just wants the ring, and he just gets desperate at that point. And man, the stuff with Denethor too, how when he's introduced, and the stuff with was it Faramir, how he basically becomes depressed because his dad basically says like, yeah, Boromir shouldn't have died. You should have died, pretty much. It was just like, oh my gosh, like that. It's gut wrenching. It's really, really sad too. Like, not only does it put the heroes in going on the journey into like the darkest places, but even emotionally too, like that is just, it's really heavy, and just, it goes to show this is like the conclusion. We're going to those places that are just unapologetic, but that also kind of like the classic Disney, when I say classic Disney formula, like not in terms of just manipulation, but just the fact that if you show your audience something that is very dark and scary, it makes the happy ending all the more effective and all the more satisfying. And it feels earned too. Like, this is not the case where they just be like, oh yeah, we need to have the ending be happy just because the movie's over. It's like, no, they achieved their goal, and they should feel happy that they survived basically. Like that's all the more, that's what's important.
It is incredible, just like in how they sort of present this sort of mad king, and just, you sort of like, yeah, you could tell this guy's gone completely mad, like, especially after Faramir comes back all wounded, but they say he's not dead, but he thinks he's dead, but you just see him losing his mind, and it's like, yeah, this guy is completely off his rocker. And then Gandalf comes by and just hits him, and is like, in sort of a bit of a humorous moment, because instead of like the film sort of like swaying of your emotions a bit, where it's like, oh man, things are going to get more bleak now, because this guy is telling all of his like guards to stand back, that we're all done for here, but Gandalf's like, nah, nah, fuck that, we got to go to war, guys. And so it's really awesome. It's really impressive, and like just how they sort of present like this type of character. I know for some people he was a little bit over the top, but I don't know, I think it still is pretty effective. Like, it, because I think they got a really strong character actor to play him in John Noble, and so like so I think he does sort of bring this level of just like this level of just like madness, and just like discontent, and just like, so you can just tell this guy is just completely lost. So like, it's like insane in how they do that, and it is surprisingly effective once like everything sort of goes the way that it does, when he inevitably like faces his own fate, and trying to like make end Faramir's life a little early. So it's just incredible, and just like how they sort of like demonstrate all this with that character. So it's really cool.
Yeah, I also really love how in this film, because it's the conclusion, it's a lot of payoffs are basically happening here, and also just like character growth. Like, I noticed it a lot with like Merry and Pippin, especially how the transition from them in Fellowship being sort of comic relief side characters to here, oh, they're pretty much like underdog heroes basically. Like when Pippin kills the orc, especially in that one scene when he's fighting with Gandalf, is just that's so satisfying. And then Merry going along with with the Eowyn to battle. It's like, oh, we see that they've like they rise up basically. They've transitioned from being these little hobbits to, oh, they actually grow into these heroes, and that's really really cool to see too. And like the dialogue overall in all these films is very solid, but there's a lot of lines in this one that are not only iconic but also show the what's it the the weight of the situation too, especially more with Frodo and Sam once they get closer to Mount Doom. There's a part where Sam says, "I don't think there will be a return journey, Mr. Frodo," implying that like, yeah, we've made it this far, but we're probably gonna die at this point, like being entrusted with this responsibility. But that goes to show that like, yeah, they're not gonna quit. They're gonna fulfill their journey basically, and that shows true courage. That's true bravery, and that's why we root for these characters, especially. So, but I don't know, just those lines too. It really shows that there is something dour and just very taxing, basically, on the characters, and it makes you root for them even more. Just like, we don't want to see them die. We want to see them succeed, and also go back to their happy lives in the Shire. And I really loved the one scene when they're on Mountain Doom basically, which is a really really effective when it comes to communicating just how like hot that environment must feel. Like you see the sweat like sort of rolling down, and they're all like dirty too. But like Frodo, he's like reminiscing, or Frodo and Sam, they're reminiscing about the Shire and like the taste of the strawberries or the grass or whatnot. Like, and then when the older music swells up too, it's really effective at being like, yeah, we want to see these characters go back to their lives after the hell that they went through to get to this point, basically.
Yeah, it's like you just start to feel like how more daunting this whole quest feels. Because it's like, because I think like Jackson knew, like, because like these type of narratives aren't anything new. And you could argue like a lot of the fantasy films prior to this like built off of the original Lord of the Rings book. I mean, I think there was like an era where there were people that were trying to do something like Lord of the Rings, but it ended up coming off a little bit, either cheesy or just not effective in a way. Like I sort of think about Conan the Barbarian in some cases, which don't get me wrong, I love like that film. It's very entertaining, but it's sort of like you never get to feel the passage of time that well. Like here, you really feel how daunting this journey has been on the characters. Like you really, like you kind of see they're all tired. You kind of see like they're running out of food. They're it's just wearing on them. And the quest is getting more difficult once they reach Mordor, and you kind of see how hellish it looks, and it's infested with orcs everywhere. There's a giant volcano, and then a tower with Sauron's eye on top of it. It's like it's a really like hellish landscape that only heavy metal bands would dream up. It's insane, just the level of dire tones and nature of this location make you feel. And you sort of see the characters that way. It's like, oh man, I'm just feeling wicked exhausted right now. But it's that good type of exhaustion, not the exhaustion where I had to step out of the theater when watching Baz Luhrmann's Elvis. It's like I'm actually feeling like I'm wanting to still can finish up this journey, despite the fact that I just can't take it anymore. It's like it really is that effective in how it sort of presents all that.
Yeah, like Frodo and Sam, by the time they're on Mount Doom, like they can barely stand. Like they're like slowly crawling up the mountain. And it's just, that goes to show just they are exhausted. They just not want it to be done, but it's like they are struggling to get to the end. And man, and well, even like the battle too that goes on to distract Sauron is also just phenomenal in and of itself. Like I know some people debate like, oh, is it this or Helm's Deep? And I prefer Helm's Deep, but still can't deny that just the choreography, like all the horseback riders too, it's practical, and like the elephants as well. Just it's crazy. It's a crazy ambitious fight scene or battle as well. And yeah, just seeing that unfold, like especially from the technical stuff, like there's some of the elephants don't look the best by today's standards, but just the film communicates the scale really, really well. Like these things feel like they are towering over the characters, and yeah, it's very effective.
Yeah, it's really awesome, and just like how everything just sort of feels big. Like they knew that they had to like end this on such a high note, especially after two really great predecessors. And just the level, just you just sitting there enjoying all the filmmaking just unfold. Like because it's like it's pure movie magic when you're watching this. It's like you're just I mean at one point it's like, I don't usually take notes while watching a movie, but I kind of felt like with this one I should. But like the moment the battle at Minas Tirith starts, it's like I really put down my notes and just wanted to like bask in the glory of just these scenes going on and these characters just trying to get through these battles. Like, I mean, there's so many great character moments. I mean, I know we talked about Legolas earlier and how he's like so perfect, but honestly, that scene where he just takes down the elephant, like that is, that's awesome.
Still only
Like,
counts as one.
yeah. And like good sense of humor with Gimli in that scene. It's awesome. Like I really enjoyed that. And the moment where they jump out of the ship and then this army of ghosts that starts running behind them, taking out these orcs. It's like It's just so satisfying, and like the journey is not over after this. Like one quest still has to be done in order to end all this, and it's like you just really start to feel it all just building up to just a wonderful, wonderful resolution. It's really amazing just like how the movie magic just works here, like just every technical element just building on top of one another with just the camera, visual effects, everything. It's just, oh my god, this is just perfect.
I love Eowyn's line when she defeats the orc and she goes, I am no man. Like,
yeah, and it's funny
so
because
perfect.
Yeah, it's perfect, and it's like it doesn't feel forced either. Because
it feels earned.
Because in the book, it's like, yeah, I mean, she was that type of character where she wanted to help out. It wasn't like a gender thing, and because I know like what we saw this like with Endgame where they tried to like all these female heroes team up or whatever, and it's like they're we're all gonna take down these creatures or whatever, and it's like that you could tell that moment felt a little bit forced or whatever, because it was just when to get the audience to clap. Like here it's just like, yeah, like she earned it. Like she really like thought through a lot of prejudice about her gender and just like fought through battles. Like that line like works very well.
It earns the applause.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, and I think the entire climactic scene of Sam and Frodo on Mount Doom while Frodo is like he's like holding the ring over the lava and he's like slowly tempted to like take it, like it's a perfect scene. Just the atmosphere, and then when Gollum comes in to like sort of fight him for the ring as well, just like that entire sequence is just immaculate. And like I love the intensity, how it could have all just like crumbled right there if Frodo decided like no, well he does kind of say like, yeah, I'm gonna take the ring, but if he followed through with that, then the whole like journey would have been pointless. And that's like horrifying to think about, just everything we went through, all that for nothing. It's like the stakes are raised to such a high point where it would have been devastating. But then the fact that when it's done, that resolution just feels like there's a gigantic weight is lifted off of all the characters' shoulders, and it's just like, we did it, we won. But then they have the journey back too. So
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I know we mentioned like those like in the battle scenes. I guess I wanted to talk about the scenes with Shalob, the giant spider. Like,
oh yeah,
yeah, like I think you mentioned Jackson's whole horror background. I think that the background really shines in those scenes. Like, because I'm not scared of spiders at all. I mean, I could easily stomp on it and be like, yeah, dude's done for the day. But I mean, yeah, if they were big, might be a different story. But
yeah.
I think it's like just seeing like Frodo, Gollum, Loom, like leading Frodo through this like layer of like spider webs. It just like, and you see like these camera turns and like 360s sort of, and just like saying like, oh man, this feels like legit horrifying here. Like
Mm-hmm.
you get that gist very well. I mean, I'm completely like floored a little bit because like I'm not usually scared of those type of scenes, but that scene like I actually did put me on edge a little bit. It's like, man, I forgot how I really forgot how like tense that those scenes were, and just seeing this spider just sort of like wiggle around, and especially like the moment where he stabs Frodo with his stinger or whatever. It's like it's insane. Just
Yeah, the
the
sound effect
atmosphere.
too.
Yeah, like and it all feels like so grody too. Like you just hearing it move. It's like, I mean, Jackson just really knew how to like make a scene like that so tense. Like, and it's this like proper build up too. Like, and like I say, like you sort of feel like these characters like just hitting their lowest of lows and are at the highest of highs. But at that moment you can be like, oh, it's over. Like Frodo just got his ass killed, but no, Sam comes through and like saves him. It's like you really start to feel that those moments of like hope just
Mm-hmm.
really shine through in scenes like that.
Well, and his loyalty too, because it just goes to show that yeah, Sam will do anything for Mister Frodo. Like he's that good of a friend, and yeah, it really shines through in that scene. Like yeah, the whole spider stuff. I'd forgotten just how like horrifying that is. Like when Frodo's mouth starts to like foam too. It's
Mm-hmm.
like oh my gosh, like it's intense. Like it's a pretty scary scene. Quite honestly. Um, Yeah,
Yeah.
there's one thing I wanted to talk about too. Well, there's two things, but first one, I'd actually briefly mentioned this when we talked about Citizen Kane, unknowing that we would actually talk about the Lord of the Rings at some point. But there's a common nitpick in this film regarding the eagles.
Mm-hmm.
How some people claim, oh, why didn't they just use the eagles and fly to Mount Doom? Then they could have avoided all the battles and like not go through all this. And the only thing I'm thinking is that did you remember that the riders they also have like their own flying creatures too? Like if you flew on the eagles,
Yeah.
you would have been like ambushed by them. So like I don't understand why people say like, oh, this was a massive plot hole in the Lord of the Rings. They could have just flown on the eagles and it would have been okay. It's like the riders that fly. Did you forget about that?
Yeah. And people have pointed out like, this whole plot hole with the Eagles. Because I think the people sort of like realize with these Eagles is like, they do sort of feel like this Deus Ex Machina. I mean, and of course it's been made fun to death. I think fun of to death. I think the most like um, best example of this being made fun of and like sort of like showing what would happen if it did like if the Eagles did fly to Mount Doom was like how it should have ended's video where you just see them drop the ring into Mount Doom and it's like, oh yeah, we have eagles, why can't we just like drop it in there? That I know there's like a justifiable reason is apparently like Sauron has like a way of detecting eagles because of course he has that giant eye, So like,
Oh, exactly.
once he
Yeah.
sees, yeah, like so like once he sees like things happening, he'll be able to like find ways to like corrupt them, and there was no way to like have the Eagles like fly over Mount Doom. Like I think that's been something that's been stated in the book, not stated that well in the film, and of course like you have the I think they're called Nazguls. Like yeah, you have the
Hmm.
Nazgul creatures that are also sort of defending Sauron as well. So there's like not much of a way to get past that point. And so that's why there had to be like some absolute stealth for like Frodo and Sam to get through, because this world, like at least how they sort of treat hobbits here, is sort of like not like second class citizens, but they sort of like don't think that hobbits can do anything outside of like drink and party or whatever. So there is like so I think like it does make a lot of sense and smartly does so, and because they are intelligent, eagles are intelligent beings, but they're probably not gonna like go head on into like dropping a ring of Mount Doom in front of the Eye of Sauron like that. Nah, I don't think they would. So I think it does make the whole plot of Lord of the Rings a lot of sense. And plus, like if it ended that way, like where would the Battle of Helm's Deep be? Where would the satisfying moments of the ending
Exactly.
be? So it's like, I know it's like, oh, you want to poke holes in a story that was written in the 50s, but it's like, you guys got to like realize it's like, it would be one boring ass movie if it wasn't even like how it should have ended addressed. Like, oh, can you imagine like if we went through all that, we could have died. It's like, yeah, but it wouldn't have been that impressive of a journey. It's like, so honestly, like I'm not. So I think like people trying to point them out as like sort of this like giant plot hole, and yes, I can understand like yeah, there's sort of a Deus ex machina where like yeah, they come in and they save the day sort of, but honestly, like it's the movie magic, guys. We want that.
Yeah.
We want that shit. We want those moments to really feel like we're in these locations and feel like we're on this journey. And so I think having if we ended the story that way, like I would have been very disappointed.
Yeah, I don't even have a problem with it. I know some people say it's with the Deus Ex Machina thing, how it's like, oh, how convenient that the Eagles are even like saving Frodo and Sam. But I just chalked up to like, well, Tolkien was very much influenced by classic mythology, and those are like in every story. The Deus Ex Machina is such a common narrative device that, okay, that doesn't bother me. But yeah, I agree that if they did Flying the Eagles, then like half the movie doesn't happen, or half of the trilogy doesn't happen, and then it's not exciting. It's just way too convenient overall. So yeah, there was. I know a lot of people also complain about how there's too many endings to the movie too,
Mm-hmm.
like which I fundamentally disagree. It's a 9-hour trilogy, so you can't just have a 5-minute conclusion. You got to wrap up everything. So yeah, that I don't have an issue with, but if there is something I do have an issue with this film, and it's not really a narrative reason, it's an editing decision, and it's the fact that in the theatrical cut of Return of the King, Saruman's death was left out, and it's in the extended cut, which I'd seen first, and I thought like, okay, that makes sense. You start off with Saruman's death because that shows how why he's not present, and then in the theatrical cut, he's just like, oh yeah, he's locked in the tower, so he has no way of getting out. Okay, cool. Move on. It's like, what is that? That's so. I don't understand why, out of anything to cut out of this film, for why Peter Jackson decided, yeah, let's leave out Saruman's death, like the main villain of this entire trilogy. We're barely going to address. It's such a strange decision. And I know you said that Peter Jackson said his reasoning why. I don't know why he cut it out. So.
Yeah, so
I'm very curious now.
hold on. I want to verify this so that way I don't feel like I'm wrong.
So we won't get sued by Peter Jackson.
Yeah, because I feel like I know I read it. Okay, so he had a reasoning, and I think I do find this funny. And you also got it is going to be funny when you're considering the length of the film. But his reasoning was pacing and narrative focus. So,
So so weird.
yeah,
It's like the first scene in the movie too.
yeah, it's an odd one. But so initially he was thinking like adding that in would have made the film longer than it already was, which I mean, yeah, you're already dealing with a 3.5 hour film. And he was thinking like, okay, it's for the average moviegoer to walk into the theater and he would think like, okay, Sauron was naturally defeated after, losing to the Ents after Helm's Deep. But the thing is, it's like, it doesn't make much sense considering it is like the opening scene of the movie.
Yeah, I don't understand.
Yeah, and you could argue that like Jackson was probably trying to hit a timeline, so there could have been something notes from the studio where it's like we need you to cut this down now or whatever. So there could have been that too. And I think he wanted to try to shift the focus more onto like the growing threat of Sauron or whatever. But considering the film itself is all about closure, and like trying to close all these major arcs, close all these like major parts of these character stories, it wouldn't hurt to have those extra 2 to 3 minutes of seeing Saruman hit his end.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now it's about closure.
Yeah, so it's like, oh yeah, the film's 200 minutes long. Like it could be 205. I'm fine with that. I mean, I sat through Killers of the Flower Moon, Saint and Tango. I know a lot of modern film audiences probably haven't, but I'm pretty sure that adding an extra 5 minutes to explain what happened to Saruman, Winifred, and you sort of do get a reasoning in the theatrical, like, oh, he doesn't really have that much power anymore. He's sort of just locked up in his tower, so he can't do a thing. But that's bullshit.
Yeah, it's such a it feels borderline like a cop out almost, which I feel like that's not the intention, but like the way they explain it in the film is just so nonsensical. Because then technically, when they defeat the ring, Saruman's still alive. He's just still locked in there, and like, yeah, they explain, oh, he can't really use his power, but he's still alive. So what? I just don't understand the reasoning. And from what I remember, the scene isn't even that long either. So not to be one of those guys where it's like, oh, the endings are too long, but in my honest opinion, if you were to like cut out like a little section of like the last 30 minutes, and if I'd rather have Saruman's death in there instead of like one little subsection of the ending, basically. I think that's more important personally. Like obviously there needs to be a resolution to wrap up all the character arcs, but there had to have been something else that was not as essential in comparison.
Yeah,
So,
and the thing is, it's like honestly, like every single scene in this movie is like already essential.
mhm.
I mean, I don't think there was ever a scene that I felt like dragged at all. I mean, I know people can sort of say like maybe before Aragorn and company venture into the valley to grab the undead army or whatever. Like I could say, oh, like no, that drags a little bit, but honestly, that's like moments of just building character. That's moments of like building like more like camaraderie or like adding a bit of like breathing room before we jump into the battle at Minas Tirith. So like honestly, like adding in those extra 5 minutes, like that would have been fine. Like you don't have
Wouldn't
to
have hurt.
worry. Yeah. And it's like, the thing is your audience is already expecting a over 3.5 hour movie. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, and the plus, like, you need to have some closure. I know like Jackson said it was, gonna be, he could have felt like it was gonna be anticlimactic, but I don't know, I kind of feel like the opposite. Like it
Yeah.
would have honestly like helped give an end, because otherwise, you just sort of think like, oh, Saruman's just, gonna be sitting in his tower crying to rom-coms all day. It's like, no, he's not gonna do that. Like if we think Saruman, we've seen the guy's character. He's not sort of like, you probably would think he would never be so terrified of trees. Like, and obviously
Yeah.
he was in Two Towers, but still. But you gotta like sort of think like, yeah, this is where it's okay to add those extra few minutes. Like it's
Yeah.
not an issue.
It's a shame too because Saruman is such a great villain too that he, in a weird way, he deserves sort of like a quote send off too, where it's like we want it, even if it's a death, like he deserves to go out like with a bang, pretty much. Like it's not fun when he's like, oh yeah, he's just locked up, he's in a timeout, basically. Like that's lame. I want to see either him actually leaving or he perishes. So like he's the villain. So
yeah, it's so
whatever.
true.
Yeah,
and I guess we could sort of tap on the endings too, because I know that was also a major complaint of this film. I think out of the things people sort of complain about with Lord of the Rings, a lot of it do stem back to Return of the King a lot.
ironically.
And I think, yeah, despite the fact that, this is the film that, won the Academy Award and, managed to leave a huge stamp on film history. But I know people sort of had issues with the endings. And not that the endings were bad. I think there was more or less the fact that there were just too many of them. Initially, if you tried to count, it was probably 5 for the theatrical version, 7 for the extended edition. So you're probably, in a spot where it's you want to be wrapping up. I was at, and this is actually the point where I did turn the riff tracks back on because hearing, those guys' reactions to, the endings was pretty hilarious. Because, that's a point to have any comedic commentary. That is a point to have it. So, but honestly, I don't have much of an issue with the way things are. I can understand the fade outs, but to me,
the fade
at
outs
least,
are a bit much.
Yeah, from the fade out with, from an editing perspective, the fade outs, fades are supposed to sort of be used for a passage of time type thing. And not all the time. I mean, you could have moments of quick cuts of somebody being on a phone call. I sort of think back to If I Had Legs That Kick You, where they sort of have moments of quick cut editing while she's trying to get on the phone with somebody. But most of the time, fade outs are sort of used as either an end to something or they're sort of transitioning from one scene to the other. So I think it still reads for me. But I know for a lot of people, it doesn't, because it sort of feels like the film is sort of faking you out. Oh, you thought it ended here. It's, well, here's another ending. It's yeah. I can understand people being thrown off by it. I think it's very understandable. I think it's a valid critique, just in the same way how the whole Sauron death getting cut is a valid critique too. But I do think that with the fact that it is closing so much of these character stories and trying to give you these moments of just feeling like that, you're feeling like a huge weight has just come off your shoulders. I believe that these endings feel earned. I don't have an issue with them. I don't have an issue with them taking this long because I think Jackson wanted us to feel like that everything is starting to be as tranquil as it could be. So I think, there's valid critiques, but, that's just how I interpret it.
Yeah, I agree that with the ending, I will say in the extended cut, the amount of endings was a little much, but obviously that's the extended version. Like I did that to myself. But in the theatrical cut, yeah, the amount of them don't bother me at all because for everything you said. I will say though, with the fades, I find it a bit devious that it's not just a fade, it's specifically a fade to black, implying that the credits are going to come after. So I think that's, I know some people say like, oh, the fades are the problem. The fades aren't necessarily an issue because, as you said, they signify the passage of time. It's the fact that they're a fade to black. I think that's where the issue falls for me. It's like that sort of signals like, okay, the fade to black, the story is done. We expect credits to show up, but then no, it picks back up. I think that one little change, if it was just a fade into the next scene, then I probably wouldn't be as not, I wouldn't say annoyed because I don't think it's that big of a deal, but it's like, I think people would be more forgiving, basically. Yeah. And then, but then the ending too, like just Aragorn's line of "you bow to no one," also just excellent, just perfect.
Yeah,
And it's like, yeah, I get like chills watching
yeah,
that scene where it's like that rarely happens when I watch a movie.
yeah. It's just like it's just pure moments of just feeling like that role. You're like I said, you're having a huge weight come off your shoulder, and because if you're like and like a lot of people like you watch these films back to back to back, and you want to feel like you're on that journey. And I mean, that's why we sort of see these characters go through trials and tribulations, even to the point of losing a finger and, almost dying in many circumstances that you weren't expected to die in. It's like
Getting stabbed 3 times.
yeah, getting stabbed, getting attacked by all these orcs. Like it's a very daunting journey. But I think by having the film sort of close the door this way, it is really effective. Like it's hard not to like feel emotional once you see Frodo jump on that boat. Like it's really hard not to, feel like proud of these guys once they get like the recognition on top of Minas Tirith. Like it's hard not to feel all these emotions of like you're probably not going to see these characters again. I mean, you've been with all these guys like for 3 movies. Like it actually feels like you've been with these characters. Like the actual like journey to Mordor, like, and it's just showing how great like the editing is in this film. 6 months. Like it's 6 months. Like it was a half a year for these hobbits to jump all the way from a tranquil place such as the Shire all the way to a very hellish place like Mordor. Like that's what you sort of felt like with this whole like journey. It's like you're feeling everything come to an end, and after like feeling like that you've been through hell on wheels for the past few months, like honestly, like yeah, take it in. Take the moments of these guys returning back to the Shire, building their lives, and eventually having to part ways. It's perfect. Like this is, I know for a while, like, oh man, this film is so fucking long. Like, how are we gonna, I really got things I gotta do. But hey, I am very happy with how everything ended. And it's deserved. Like none of it's unearned. It's all deserved.
It feels like a genuine goodbye. Like it doesn't just feel like, oh, the movie's done, let's go back to our normal lives. It's like, no, we really feel like we are saying goodbye to these characters and to this world. And it manages to like have a better like conclusion more than like most mini series or like year-long seasonal like TV shows have done. Like it wraps up that nicely too. And yeah.
Yeah. It's awesome. I mean, what else is there even to say about the way this film ended? I mean, or like the way this whole trilogy did. It's really hard to, imagine the modern filmmaking landscape without Lord of the Rings. And yeah,
Yeah,
like
left a big impact.
yeah, I mean it's like there's been other franchises, of course, that have existed before then, like Superman, Batman, um, you know, and of course, like trilogies are not a new thing either. Of course, you have Sergio Leone's $3 trilogy and Once Upon a Time trilogy, Star Wars, obviously, and The Godfather too as well. Um, but I don't know. I'm thinking like blockbuster filmmaking. I mean, and yeah, Star Wars does sort of count in a sense, but by this point, Star Wars was sort of done before Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, like Phantom Menace was released 1999, but I think there was not very much of an aspiration for Lucas to return to Star Wars until the 90s. And Star Wars wasn't like, and yeah, like the original trilogy, of course, will still have its impact, regardless of its flaws. But that was 70s. Like, blockbusters were still a big deal, but they weren't taken seriously as a high art form. I mean, yeah, the first Star Wars got nominated for the Academy Award for Best Picture, back when it came out, because of course it did. It left a huge stamp, but blockbuster filmmaking wasn't taken quite as seriously. I mean, there's been points where, they've recognized it, like, Indiana Jones has obviously been recognized, but I don't think it's ever been recognized in this way, at least in the modern era, without Lord of the Rings. Because you wouldn't get Avatar getting nominated, Top Gun Maverick wouldn't have gotten nominated for Best Picture either. I mean, there's so many modern blockbusters that wouldn't have, been respected in that way until Lord of the Rings showed up. It's so influential in that way. Because like people like to say, "Oh, blockbusters, that's just all, fanboy schlop or whatever," and it's not high art. But I don't know, like these films show that it is an art form. They show that it's worth the experience, even with the daunting runtimes. So.
Yeah, I mean it definitely lifted the bar basically for that level of blockbuster. And it talk about like the influence too of Lord of the Rings. It feels like every blockbuster franchise has been trying to do what Lord of the Rings did. Like especially in the 2000s, we saw that probably a bit more. I think once the MCU kickstarted, then it's shifted again towards implementing like the cinematic universe. But man, in the 2000s, because we had the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, which that really seemed to be Disney's answer to the Lord of the Rings, especially because they filmed the sequels back to back. Disney even did that with Narnia as well. Mm-hmm. And you could argue Avatar probably was trying to be like that, but it just took them longer to make the movies, though. They didn't film at all. Well, they filmed the sequels back to back, but that just took longer because of the technology. So, yeah, it was clear. And it went to show that this type of high genre filmmaking that took itself seriously, treated its characters and its audience members with respect too. Like it wasn't a farce. Like I think that's also what helped, because especially when you go to the 90s, like blockbuster, I don't know like what the prior fantasy example would be, but I just kind of think about the transition of like superhero movies from the 90s into the 2000s. Even those seem to have an influence from the Lord of the Rings too, in terms of the tone and the atmosphere. Like you kind of see that influence in the Nolan trilogy as well too. So yeah, it's hard to put into words just how impactful the trilogy was, and the fact that in the grand scheme of the film culture, it's not even that old. Like it's almost 25 years old. Like it's fairly recent, all things considered, but it goes to show like just within that short amount of time, just how much the landscape has changed because of these films is astounding.
Yeah, it's something I think we are going to come close. I mean, I think we're all having our fingers crossed that Dune Part 3 could potentially
Dune is the closest, yeah.
Yeah, potentially could do a Return of the King. I know I sort of joked in a text like a few years ago to you, where it's like, oh no, it's prophesized, so like that's on Eve. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. I mean, hopefully that can sort of get its recognition. But even if it does, I mean, I it's really hard to imagine the modern film landscape without this franchise. It's really impossible. Um, and yeah, like I said, like Star Wars, but like, you know, I don't think anything is going to have this level of influence like Lord of the Rings did. It's just incredible. I mean, to me, it's probably, honestly, it's my favorite. It's probably the best in my opinion.
The best trilogy?
Yeah, best trilogy. I mean, and yeah, there's other trilogies that have gotten close, like, Edgar Wright's Three Colors trilogy. Not Three Colors, Cornetto trilogy.
Three Colors trilogy.
Yeah,
I want to see that.
Yeah. Yeah, the Cornetto trilogy, the Three Colors trilogy, of course. I know Godfather's gotten close, but they should have shot the bed with part 3.
Yeah, that's why I can't say it's up there, because the third one sucks.
Yeah, Matrix never was able to do it. I mean, I guess you could argue the Captain America films within the MCU sort of did, but I don't know. I don't know if I'd consider Captain America a full trilogy. I mean, I think Marvel just tries to package all those into a trilogy, but in actuality, they're just franchises. Yeah, the Dark Knight trilogy, I would say, for sure. Even if it's sort of limped to its end. And yes, yeah, the original Star Wars is still there, and I think it's just so ubiquitous of pop culture that it's really hard to make much comments on it, especially with a protective fan base. But I don't know. I mean, how do you feel?
I think this is definitely one of the most consistent film trilogies. I have to say that. After this viewing, this definitely really went up there for me. I'm trying to think in terms of film trilogies that I think are quote unquote better I just prefer more. Like, I think in my opinion, my favorite film trilogy is the Before trilogy. I think that's right up there. I think the Toy Story trilogy, which is no longer a trilogy anymore, but the first 3 Toy Story films, like that's almost a perfect trilogy right there, in all honesty. So yeah, those might, in my opinion, I might prefer those over Lord of the Rings. But yeah, no, Lord of the Rings, it's at least top 5, like maybe top 3. So it's hard to say whether or not. I don't know I'm trying to think if I prefer this over the original Star Wars trilogy. That's kind of what I'm thinking. So
yeah.
I
mean, it's hard. It's hard. It's hard for sure.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. They're both great. So
yeah, that is for sure.
Yeah.
I guess it's interesting to see where Peter Jackson sort of ended up after this. I mean, of course, King Kong came after this. Initially, he had King Kong before the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yeah.
But, it ended up getting sidelined and, ended up getting canceled, or they just shelved it. But, eventually I think after Lord of the Rings it became successful, he went back to that. And, it was successful. I think there's people that were divided on it, but it didn't, it wasn't the level of impact Lord of the Rings had. Then Lovely Bones, not a good movie. And then, of course, he just went back to Middle Earth with the Hobbit trilogy, which it's definitely inferior to the original Lord of the Rings trilogy. I mean, it has some merits, though. I mean, it definitely does, but it's insane that he even tried to extend the book that is shorter than all the original Lord of the Rings books.
Yeah.
And managed to stretch it out to 3 movies. Literally the last Battle of the Five Armies is literally the last 20 pages of the book. So I don't know.
Talk about an extension.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, apparently he did have a part in the 1010 movie, if Adventures of Tintin with Spielberg and
Oh,
Edgar Wright, but he's produced
oh
it.
wait, yeah. I can't believe we didn't mention this, but Peter Jackson, he was awarded the honorary Palme d'Or at Cannes this year, and he confirmed
Yeah,
that he's going to do the Tintin sequel. It's like finally
yeah,
happening.
yeah, that's awesome. I'm very happy with that. But yeah, he produced it. Obviously Spielberg directed and Edgar Wright wrote the script, but which that's a rare collaboration you don't see often. Um, where a couple filmmakers produce and just do different things. But yeah, it's awesome to see that. But yeah, Hobbit was like probably his most recent in terms of the at least fiction films he's made. Obviously to me very inferior, but like I said, they got their fans. But his documentary work has been incredible, though. They Shall
Oh yeah,
Not
they
Grow
should
Old
not
is
grow old.
yeah, and of course the Beatles Get Back documentary series. Really good, really awesome. So, but I don't know. I mean, I think his stamp is pretty much set. I think after Lord of the Rings, like he didn't really. I mean, I guess he wanted to do more epics, but I guess it just sort of felt like I don't know, just gonna dive into like the Beatles history or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. He has nothing left to prove basically after Lord of the Rings. Like, just let him do whatever.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. I mean, we can forget about the lovely bones.
I never
But
saw that, but I heard it's bad.
oh yeah, it's really bad. Like really bad. Apparently Gosling was supposed to be in the film, but he didn't like the way Gosling was taking the role, so he like recasted him.
Mm.
Like, man. But I don't know, it's impressive, but we are about the length of the of one of the
Yeah,
films in the trilogy now.
yeah. We're
But
about the
final
length of
thoughts.
Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah. No, it's
I mean,
actually
yeah.
it's longer, but yeah. Final thoughts?
Oh, is it longer? Oh, yeah. No, it's incredible. It's an incredible film. I think it's if we're talking about like best endings to a trilogy, like this is easily the best one. Honestly, there's no contest. It just everything wraps up super well, and yeah, incredible battles, great character arcs, immense attention to like detail and scale. Honestly, if I were to make a fan edit of this film in particular, I would put the Saruman death in, and then maybe trim out some of the other stuff and some stuff in the ending, and it'll be like a perfect film for me. But judging the theatrical cut, because of that's the lack of that Saruman death, it does sort of bring down the score slightly. But overall, it's probably the best one out of all of them, and yeah, there's a reason why it won 11 Oscars, and yeah, it's just an excellent film. So I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. So yeah,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the Saruman death, like leaving that out, that does hurt the film.
yeah,
But I am like just sort of like thinking back, even to like watching this, because I mean they did sort of try to give closure, it just wasn't very good closure. So I think regardless they had it. Because the rest of the film is like damn near perfect. I think it really is like a marvel that you can't help but like be at all of its existence. I mean, the battles are incredible. The performances are amazing, of course. The journey starts to feel more dire, but once that journey ends, you just feel like this huge weight off your shoulders. I mean, it's really hard not to appreciate the level of filmmaking and craftsmanship that's in this movie and in this trilogy. So I mean, it's difficult. But yeah, I mean, it's ballsy of me to even give it this rating. But I'm always considering that I talked about like the Saruman death being left out, but I think even with that, like I honestly this is damn near perfect. So yeah, I think 10 out of 10. So with the Saruman death scene in.
Yeah, I get that. No worries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it works, though. I think it works.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. Now we got 7 endings to do.
7 endings.
And this gotta fade.
Fade to black.
Fade back in. I can't. I don't have the voice of Enya. I can't sing the after credit song.
Yeah.
Nobody does. But host track. It's your turn, my man.
Yeah. So when we were talking about the Lord of the Rings, we were talking about another film franchise quite often, and that was Star Wars. And of course, Lord of the Rings had a big influence on George Lucas, I'm pretty sure. And likewise, I wouldn't be surprised if Star Wars had an influence on Peter Jackson to some degree when it comes to this sort of blockbuster filmmaking franchise. So for that reason, I was thinking about it, and I felt like because of that, to transition from one film franchise to another, I felt like there was no better film to recommend from within the Star Wars franchise that there's a lot to talk about. It's a very important entry in the saga that has had its opinions changed over the course of time, and I think is a very important follow-up to one of the most important films of our time, and that is Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi.
Oh boy. I'm typing.
Sorry,
or at least a fan is typing. Like, how dare you talk about Star Wars The Last Jedi and say it's a good or bad movie?
Well, I feel like the dust has settled enough where we can talk about it just as a film, because I haven't seen it in a long time, but it's been almost 10 years. I think it's safe to talk about now.
Yeah, I think it is too. It's going to be interesting. We've been talking about a lot of fandoms for the first 9 episodes of Cinema Boulevard.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, it's just so omnipresent in our culture. That's just kind of hard to avoid.
Yeah, I mean, MJ fans, Tolkien Charlie
fans.
XCX fans. We briefly mentioned Star Wars fans, but I guess we got to go for the jugular,
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
boy.
Fandoms are everywhere.
They're all over the place, guys. We just can't get rid of them. But, I don't know. There's good fandoms out there. There's some bad ones. But there's mostly good ones. But it depends on who you ask. Our journey comes to an end. We're not going to continue on with The Hobbit or The Silmarillion, but we're going to do The Last Jedi from the Star Wars franchise instead. And if you want to hear us talk about The Last Jedi and don't want to get spoiled, watch the film before the next episode. Either way, we'll come out every other Monday. And if you haven't already, you could follow us on our social media, which our links are in the description. And if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcast, feel free to give us a follow. And if you're listening on YouTube, hit that like and subscribe icon along with the bell icon so you can get notified when a new video comes out. Like I said, I can't sing like Enya. There's no chance. But our journey has come to an end. And we're going to bitch about Star Wars fans in the next episode. But otherwise, I've been Daniel.
And I've been Matthew.
And I hope you guys have a good rest of your night or day, whatever.